What's going on, Ghost fam? I hope you're doing well. How was everybody's Monday? And are you as excited as I am to be here? I want to apologize for my location once again. I know I was set up here last week because I wasn't feeling well. This week, it's simply because I just did not have time from the second I left work to the moment I started streaming. So I decided to just set up the quick setup, and that way we can hang out for a little bit longer tonight. But I apologize for being a little bit late. Hope everybody's doing well. Sean Bowden, it's good to see you. JB's Pokey Stop, welcome in. Mrs. 5150. Hey, Leighton, Layla, Katrina. So happy that you're here for story time. It is always good to see you. One Thug stacking. What's going on, fam? It's good to see you. Hope everybody's doing well. And man, I had a long day. Long day indeed. And it involved a hike. Like I took a walk during my lunch break. And I beat a record of, I think I made it 1.8 miles in like 30 minutes. Dirk McGurk, it's always good to see you, fam. Hope you're doing awesome. I will not give it as long as I normally do, because I know that we're already starting a little bit late, but we're going to get back into the Book of Dragons. And we are going to see what fun stories Mrs. Nesbit has cooked up with her dragons. But I hope everybody's Monday went well. I was just kind of in and out of Catch 'em All Kev's stream. I know that he was streaming. There we go. And it's always good to see people grow. And he's doing just fine with what he's doing. Sound check. Can everybody hear me okay? Is my headset working okay? All right, let's get it. I can hear you just fine. Sweet. Appreciate that. And I am ready to do both. I am ready to relax, and I am ready to read. And I'm hoping that my eyes can keep up. Claire C., how's it going? Welcome to Storytime. Darker Bunnies, how's it going, fam? I hope you're doing well. I just drew Moltres for you. Fish Frenzy Addiction, it's good to see you. Catch 'em all, Kev Raid, I appreciate that, Kev. It's good to see you, Frenzy. Catch 'em all Raid, Mrs. 5150, Claire C. Who else was over there? Purple Moon. Jay's Mix. 11 Legs. Lost Hero Games. Welcome in. Welcome to Storytime. Depth Mode. Welcome in. Anybody watching this back is going to think I'm very into myself and having people raid me from me. There it is. Catch 'em all, Kev Raid. Hope the rest of the stream went well, Kev. Sorry I was so in and out. I had work on one side and dog on the other. Hey, me Raid. There you go. Ghost, what's going on, Mystic? It's good to see you. Yep, that is the best. Bro vibe. This is definitely my favorite little contraption, I can tell you that much. This is something that gives me great peace. Just putting putting anything that's in chaos into order is something that I've always kind of made a hobby of, unless it's like my bedroom. My bedroom can look pretty bad sometimes. Oh, I didn't. I literally logged off my computer from work and turned on the stream button here, so I didn't have a time to look, Mrs. 5150. I'm sorry. If you send me a DM, just a reminder, I'll see it after stream and I'll check real quick. I want to say yes, just because I have a bunch of common cards from that era. If anyone, it would be the battle styles. Oh, I appreciate that, Mary Bear. Appreciate that. Anytime at all. You want to just relax and chill out on a Monday and listen to a fantastic story, you're welcome to come in. Lurking is permitted. But everybody, if you're not subbed up to Mary Bear, she definitely is a favorite in the ghost community. The ghosts love Mary Bear. And Mary Bear loves them right back. So really appreciate you. She is offering to help Nate the Pokey Ghost out with his never-ending unknown search. And trust me, that means a lot. I'm bindering. Excellent. I am amazing background noise, by the way. Okay, maybe I just send them in the mail. I'll tell you what, if you send them in the mail just 'cause, and I do have them, I'll draw on them and send them back. How about that? Unless you don't want me to and you want them back as mint. In which case, don't send. I'll look. Stamped and ready to go in the mailbox. Let's go. Appreciate that, Mary Bear. There we go. Let's put this here like this. I don't know how it got scrambled again because I was just fidgeting. There we go. Mary B or Mary B, new year, new picture. What's up, Alec? It's good to see you. Let me double check with Stafford about art. Yeah, definitely double check. I don't want to be marking on any. In which case, I'll just look and see if I have them before you send them. Because trust me, there's cards I draw on. There's cards I will never even get near with a pen. And so yeah, I definitely understand. All right. Well, welcome in. If this is your first time here with Kev the Ghost and story time with the Ghost fam, all we do is read. All we're going to do is read a book. And believe it or not, it is has nothing to do with Pokemon. In fact, this one's all about dragons. So Monday, we take a little detour from our normal content and we read. So enjoy. We are going to get into Chapter 4, The Ice Dragon, or Do As You're Told. Did we read the third? You must get him to show it to you. Yeah, we did 3 last time. We did 3 last time, so we are going to get into book number 4. I'm going to nurse my monster here. Can always draw on the clay dolls and ducklet. In fact, you can always tear them and set them on fire. Well, as funny as that may be. In fact, that was the hardest thing for me to kind of get behind on Bro Rip stream because he is the Shredder Gang for a reason. And anytime there's a card in bulk that comes up in plethora, he has a little mini shredder and he kind of shreds it down. Kev coming in with a 5. Thanks for all you do for the community, Kev. Appreciate all that you are. Peace, love, and Pokemon. Right back at you, my brother. Keep doing what you're doing. I was just talking about you minutes before the raid. Just pretty well stating that you're growing just fine, man. Keep doing what you're doing. Really appreciate you. Absolutely. In fact, the pleasure is all mine. I love hanging out with you guys, and I love having connections with y'all. It feels like I know the world when it's just outside of this right here. It's great. Nick Cornish. So he got pretty busy with work. He got some new responsibilities last I heard, and it just took a lot of time away, and they made the decision to focus more so there. And eventually the stream will come back to life, but he wants to make sure that all that's in order before he does anything, which, bro, I'm sending all my love out to you. We all love you, and as soon as you come back, we'll be there. Reach out if you ever need anything, and if we got it, you got it. But yeah, I definitely miss his streams and the Shredder gang in there. All right, well, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into our book and make sure that my peepers are ready to go here. Whew. Chapter 4, The Ice Dragon, or Do As You're Told. This is the tale of the wonders that befell on the evening of the 11th of December, when they did what they are told not to do. You may think that you know all the unpleasant things that could possibly happen to you if you are disobedient, but there are some things which you even do not know, and they did not know them either. Punctuation in this book is weird. Their names were George and Jane. There were no fireworks that year on Guy Fawkes Day, because the heir to the throne was not well. He was cutting his first tooth, and that is a very anxious time for any person, even for a royal one. He was really very poorly, so the fireworks would have been in the worst possible taste, even at Land's End or at the Isle of Man, whilst in Forest Hill, which was the home of Jane and George. Anything of the kind was quite out of the question. Even the Crystal Palace, empty-headed as it is, felt that this was no time for Catherine wheels. But when the prince had cut his tooth, rejoicings were not only admissible but correct, and the 11th of December was proclaimed Firework Day. All the people were most anxious to show their loyalty and to enjoy themselves at the same time. So there were fireworks and torchlight processions and set pieces at the Crystal Palace, with blessings on our prince and long live our royal darling in different colored fires. And the most private of boarding schools had the half-holiday, and even the children of plumbers and authors had tuppence each given to them to spend as they liked. George and Jane had sixpence each, and they spent the whole amount on Golden Rain, which would not light for ever so long, and when it did light, it went out almost at once. So they had to look at the fireworks in the gardens next door, and at the ones at the Crystal Palace, which were very glorious indeed. All their relations had colds in their heads, so Jane and George were allowed to go out into the garden alone and let off their firework. Jane had put on her fur cape and her thick gloves, and her hood with the silver fox fur on it that was made out of Mother's old muff, and George had his overcoat with the 3 capes, and his comforter, and Father's sealskin traveling cap with the pieces that came down over your ears. It was dark in the garden, but the fireworks were all about and made it seem very gay, and though the children were cold, they were quite sure that they were enjoying themselves. They got up the fence at the end of the garden to see better, and then they saw, very far away, where the edge of the dark world is, a shining line of straight, beautiful lights arranged in a row, as if they were the spears carried by the fairy army. "Oh, how pretty," said Jane. "I wonder what they are. It looks as if the fairies were planting little shining baby poplar trees and watering them with liquid light." "Liquid fiddlesticks," said George. He had been to school, so he knew that these were only the aurora borealis, or northern lights, and he said so. "But what is what's its name?" asked Jane. "Whose light's it, and what's it there for?" I don't know why she George had to own that he had not learned that. But I know, he said, that it has something to do with the Great Bear and the Dipper and the Plow and the Charles Wain. And what are they? Asked Jane. Oh, they're the surnames of some of the star families. There goes a jolly rocket, answered George, and Jane felt as if she almost understood about the star families. The fairy spears of lights twinkled and gleamed. They were much prettier than the big, blaring, blazing bonfire that was smoking and flaming and sputtering in the next door but one garden, prettier even than the colored fires at the Crystal Palace. I wish we could see them nearer, Jane said. I wonder if the star families are nice families, the kind that Mother would like us to go get tea with if we were little stars. They aren't that sort of families at all, silly, said her brother, kindly trying to explain. I only said families because a kid like you wouldn't have understood if I said constil. And besides, I've forgotten the end of the word. Anyways, the stars are all up in the sky, but you can't go to tea with them. No, said Jane. I said if we were little stars. But we aren't, said George. No, said Jane with a sigh. I know that. I'm not so stupid as you think, George. But the Tory Boris are somewhere at the edge. Couldn't we go and see them? Considering you're 8, you haven't much sense. George kicked his boot against the fencing to warm his toes. It's half the world away. It looks very near, said Jane, hunching up her shoulders to keep her neck warm. They're close to the North Pole, said George. Look here. I don't care a straw about the Aurora Borealis, but I shouldn't mind discovering the North Pole. It's awfully difficult and dangerous, and then you come home and write a book about it with a lot of pictures, and everybody says how brave you are. Jane got off the fence. Oh, George, let's, she said. We shall never have such a chance again, all alone by ourselves, and quite late, too. I'd go right enough if it wasn't for you, George answered gloomily. But you know, they always said I lead you into mischief, and if we went to the North Pole, we should get our boots wet. It's likely not, and you remember what they said about not going on the grass. They said the lawn, said Jane. We're not going on the lawn. Oh, George, do let's. It doesn't look very far. We could be back before they had time to get dreadfully angry. All right, said George, but mind, I don't want to go. So off they went. They got over the fence, which was very cold and white and shiny because it was beginning to freeze. And on the other side of the fence was somebody else's garden. So they got out of that as quickly as they could, and beyond that was a field, where there was another big bonfire, with people standing around who looked quite dark-skinned. It's the Indians, said George, and wanted to stop and look, but Jane pulled him on, and they passed by the bonfire and got through a gap at the hedge into another field, a dark one, and far away. Beyond quite a number of other dark fields, the northern lights shone and sparkled and twinkled. Now, during the winter, the Arctic regions came much farther south than they were marked on the map. Very few people know this, though you would think they could tell it by the ice in the jugs of a morning. And just when George and Jane were starting for the North Pole, the Arctic regions had come down very nearly as far as Forest Hill, so that the children walked on. It grew colder and colder, and presently they saw that the fields were covered with snow, and there were great icicles hanging from all the hedges and gates, and the northern lights still seemed way off. They were crossing a very rough, snowy field when Jane first noticed the animals. There were white rabbits and white hares and all sorts of sizes of white birds, and some larger creatures in the shadows of the hedges that Jane was sure were wolves and bears. Polar bears and Arctic wolves, of course I mean, she said, for she did not want George to think her stupid again. There was a great hedge at the end of this field, all covered with snow and icicles, but the children found a place where there was a hole, and as no bears or wolves seemed to be just in that part of the hedge, they crept through and scrambled out of the frozen ditch on the other side. And then they stood still and held their breath with wonder. For in front of them, running straight and smooth right away to the northern lights, lay a great wide road of pure dark ice, and on each side were tall trees all sparkling with white frost. And from the boughs of the trees hung strings of stars threaded on fine moonbeams, and shining so brightly that it was like a beautiful fairy daylight. Jane said so, but George said it was like electric lights at the Earl's Court exhibition. The rows of trees went as straight as ruled lines away and away and away, and at the other end of them shone the aurora borealis. There was a signpost of silvery snow, and on it, in letters of pure ice, the children read, "This way to the North Pole." Then George said, "Way or no way, I know a slide when I see one, so here goes." And he took a run on the frozen snow, and Jane took a run when she saw him do it, and the next moment they were sliding away, each with feet half-yard apart, along the great slide that leads to the North Pole. This great slide is made for the convenience of the polar bears who, during the winter months, get their food from the Army and Navy stores, and it was the most perfect slide in the world. If you have never come across it, it is because you have never let off fireworks on the 11th of December, and have never been thoroughly naughty and disobedient. But do not use these things as hope of finding the great slide, because you might find something quite different, and then you'll be sorry. The great slide is like common slides, in that when once you have started, you have to go on to the end, unless you fall down. And then it hurts just as much as the smaller kind on ponds. The great slide runs downhill all the way, so that you keep on going faster and faster and faster. George and Jane went so fast they had not time to notice the scenery. They only saw the long lines of frosted trees and the starry lamps. And on each side, rushing back as they slid on, a very broad white world and very large black night. And overhead as well, as in the trees, the stars were bright like silver lamps, and far ahead shone and trembled and sparkled the line of fairy spears. Jane said that, and George said, "I can see the northern lights quite plain." It is very pleasant slide to slide, and slide on clear, dark ice, especially if you feel you are really going somewhere, and more especially if that somewhere is to the North Pole. The children's feet made no noise on the ice, and they went on in beautiful white silence. But suddenly the silence was shattered, and a cry rang out over the snow. "Hey, you there, stop!" "Tumble for your life!" cried George, and he fell down at once, because it is the only way to stop. Jane fell on top of him, and then they crawled on hands and knees to the snow at the edge of the slide, and there was a sportsman, dressed in a peaked cap and a frozen mustache, like the one you see in pictures about Ice Peter, and he had a gun in his hand. "You don't happen to have any bullets about you?" said he. "No," George said truthfully. "I had 5 of Father's revolver cartridges, but they were taken away the day Nurse turned out my pockets to see if I had taken the knob out of the bathroom door by mistake." "Quite so," said the sportsman. "These accidents will occur. You don't carry firearms, then, I presume?" "I haven't any firearms," said George, "but I have a firework. It's only a squib one of the boys gave me, if that's any good." And he began to feel among the string and peppermints, and buttons and tops and nibs and chalk and foreign postage stamps in his knickerbocker pockets. "One could but try," the sportsman replied, and he held out his hand. But Jane pulled at her brother's jacket tail and whispered, "Ask him what he wants it for." So then the sportsman had to confess that he wanted the firework to kill the white grouse with, and when they came to look, there was a white grouse himself sitting in the snow, looking quite pale and careworn, and waiting anxiously for the matter to be decided one way or another. George put all the things back in his pockets and said, "No, I shan't. The reason for shooting him stopped yesterday. I heard Father say so it wouldn't be fair. Anyhow, I'm very sorry, but I can't, so there." The sportsman said nothing, only he shook his fist at Jane, and then he got on the slide and tried to go towards the Crystal Palace, which was not easy, because that way is uphill. So they left him trying, and went on. Before they started, the white grouse thanked them in a few pleasant, well-chosen words, and then they took the slideways slanted run and started off again. On the great slide, and so away towards the North Pole and the twinkling, beautiful lights. The great slide went on, and the lights did not seem to come much nearer, and the white silence wrapped around them as they slid along the wide, icy path. And once again the silence was broken by someone yelling, "Hey, you there, stop!" "Tumble for your life!" cried George, and tumbled as before, stopping in the only way possible, and Jane stopped on top of him, and they crawled to the edge and came suddenly on a butterfly collector who was looking for specimens with a pair of blue glasses and a blue net and a blue book with colored plates. "Excuse me," said the collector, "but have you such a thing as a needle about you, a very long needle?" "I have a needle book," replied Jane, politely, "but there aren't any needles in it now. George took them all to do things with pieces of cork, in the boy's own scientific experimenter and the young mechanic. He did not do the things, but he did for the needles." "Curiously enough," said the collector, "I too wish to use a needle in connection with cork." "I have a hat pin in my hood," said Jane. "I fastened the fur with it when I caught in the nail in the greenhouse door. It is very long and sharp. Would that do?" "One could but try," said the collector, and Jane began to feel for the pin. But George pinched her arm and whispered, "Ask what he wants it for." Then the collector had to own that he wanted the pin to stick through the great Arctic moth. "A magnificent specimen," he added, "which I am most anxious to preserve." And then, sure enough, in the collector's butterfly net sat the great Arctic moth, listening attentively to the conversation. "Oh, I couldn't," cried Jane, and while George was explaining to the collector that they would really rather not, Jane opened the blue folds of the butterfly net and asked the moth quietly if it would please step outside for a moment. And it did. When the collector saw that the moth was free, he seemed less angry than grieved. "Well, well," he said, "here's a whole Arctic expedition thrown away. I shall have to go home and fit out another. And it means a lot of writing to the papers and things. You seem to be singularly thoughtless, little girl." So they went on, leaving him trying to go uphill towards the Crystal Palace. When the great white Arctic moth had returned, thanks, in a suitable speech, George and Jane took a sideways slanting run and started sliding again, between the star lamps along the great slide towards the North Pole. They went faster and faster, and the lights ahead grew brighter and brighter, so that they could not keep their eyes open, but had to blink and wink as they went. And then, suddenly, the great slide ended in an immense heap of snow, and George and Jane shot right into it because they could not stop themselves, and the snow was soft, so that they went in up to their very ears. Take a small drink break, y'all. I hope you're enjoying it. Hi, Mama Ghost. Show some love before I get some sleep. Appreciate you, baby Jace. Hope you have a great night. It's good to see you, Mama Ghost. I hope you're doing well. Lori! How's it going, boo? It's good to see you. Appreciate the hugs, Kev. Hope everybody is doing wonderful. Hungry Alo, it's good to see you. Rafa, it's always good to see you, brother. Yeah, I'm I'm enjoying the story. I don't know if I saw a giant ice slide into the unknown pointing north that I would just go. Can't say I would. I am now that I am with all of you. It was a I don't want to say it was a hard day. It was just a long day. So I had to start a little bit late. We're about Wow, we're only 30 minutes in. How about that? But we're just reading about an ice dragon is supposed to make its appearance. The story is The Ice Dragon, or Do As You're Told, it's called. When they had picked themselves out and thumped each other on the back to get rid of the snow, they shaded their eyes and looked. And there, right in front of them, was the wonder of wonders, the North Pole, towering high and white and glistening, like an ice lighthouse. And it was quiet, quite close, so that you had to put your head as far back as it would go and farther before you could see the high top of it. It was made entirely of ice. You will hear grown-up people talk a great deal of the nonsense of the North Pole, and when you are grown up, it is even possible that you may talk nonsense about it yourself. And most unlikely things do happen. But deep down in your heart, you must always remember that the North Pole is made of clear ice, and could not possibly, if you come to think of it, be made of anything else. All around the pole, making a bright ring about it, were hundreds of little fires, and the flames of them did not flicker and twist, but went up blue and green and rosy and straight, like stalks of dream lilies. Jane said so, but George said they were as straight as ramrods. And these flames were the aurora borealis, which the children had seen as far away as Forest Hill. The ground was quite flat and covered with smooth, hard snow, which shone and sparkled like the top of a birthday cake that has been iced at home. The ones done at the shops do not shine and sparkle because they mix flour with the icing sugar. It is like a dream, said Jane. And George said, it is the North Pole. Just think of the fuss people always make about getting here. And it was no trouble at all, really. I dare say lots of people have gotten here, said Jane dismally. It's not the getting here, I see that. It's the getting back again. Perhaps no one will ever know that we have been here. And the robins will cover us with leaves and nonsense, said George. There aren't any robins, and there aren't any leaves. It's just the North Pole, that's all, and I found it. And now I shall try to climb up and plant the British flag. They're British. British flag on top of the handkerchief will do. And if it really is the North Pole, my pocket compass Uncle James gave me will spin around and around, and then I shall know. Come on. So Jane came on. And when they got close to the clear, tall, beautiful flames, they saw that there was a great, queer-shaped lump of ice all around the bottom of the pole, clear, smooth, shining ice. That was deep, beautiful Prussian blue, like icebergs in the thick parts, and all sorts of wonderful glimmery, shimmery, changing colors in the thin parts, like the cut glass chandelier in Grandmamma's house in London. It is a very curious shape, said Jane. It's almost like... She moved back a step to get a better view of it. It's almost like a dragon. It's much more like a lamppost on the Thames embankment, said George, who had noticed a curly thing like the tail that went twisting up the North Pole. Oh, George, cried Jane. It is a dragon. I can see its wings. Whatever shall we do? And sure enough, it was a dragon, a great, shining, winged, scaly, clawy, big-mouthed dragon, made of pure ice. It must have gone to sleep curled around the hole where the warm steam used to come up from the middle of the earth. And then, when the earth got colder and the column of steam froze and was turned to the North Pole, the dragon must have gotten frozen in his sleep, frozen too hard to move, and there he stayed. And though he was very terrible, he was very beautiful, too. Jane said so, but George said, Oh, don't bother. I'm thinking how to get onto the pole and try the compass without waking the brute. The dragon certainly was beautiful, with his deep, clear Prussian blueness and the rainbow-colored glitter. And rising from within the cold coil of frozen dragon, the North Pole shot up like a pillar made out of one giant diamond. And every now and then it cracked a little from sheer cold. The sound of the cracking was the only thing that broke the great white silence, in the midst of which the dragon lay like an enormous jewel. and the straight flames went up all around him, like the stalks of tall lilies. And as the children stood there looking at the most wonderful sight their eyes have ever seen, there was a soft padding of feet and a hurry-scurry behind them. And from the outside darkness, beyond the flame stalks, came a crowd of little brown creatures, running, jumping, scrambling, tumbling head over heels and on all fours, and some even walking on their hands. They joined hands, walking on their heads. Sorry. They joined hands as they came near the fires and danced around it in a ring. "It's bears," said Jane. "I know it is. Oh, how I wish I hadn't come, and my boots are so wet." The dancing ring broke up suddenly, and the next moment hundreds of furry arms clutched at George and Jane, and they found themselves in the middle of a great, soft, heaving crowd of little fat people in brown fur dresses, and the white silence was gone. "Bears indeed," cried the shrill voice. "You'll wish we were bears before you've done. You'll wish we were bears before you've done with us." This sounded so dreadful that Jane began to cry. Up to now, the children had only seen the most beautiful and wonderful things. But now they began to be sorry they had done what they were told not to, and the difference between lawn and the grass did not seem so great as it had in Forest Hill. Directly Jane began to cry, all the brown people started back. No one cries in the Arctic regions for fear of being struck by the frost, so that these people had never seen anyone cry before. "Don't cry for real," whispered George, "or you'll get chili bins in your eyes. But pretend to howl, it frightens them." So Jane went on pretending to howl, and the real crying stopped. It always does when you begin to pretend. You try it. Then, speaking very loud so as to get heard over the howls of Jane, George said, "Yeah, who's afraid?" "We are George and Jane. Who are you?" "We are the sealskin dwarfs," said the brown people, twisting their furry bodies in and out of the crowd like the channeling glass of the kaleidoscopes. "We are very precious and expensive, for we made throughout the very best sealskin." "And what are those fires for?" bellowed George, for Jane was crying louder and louder. "Those," shouted the dwarfs, coming to a step nearer, "are the fires we make to thaw out the dragon. He is frozen now, so he sleeps curled up around the pole. But when we have him thawed out, with our fires, we will wake him up and go and eat everybody in the world except us." "Whatever do you want him to do that for?" yelled George. "Oh, just for spite," bawled the dwarfs carelessly, as if they were saying, "just for fun." Jane stopped crying to say, "You are heartless." "No, we aren't," they said. "Our hearts are made of the finest sealskin, just like our little fat sealskin purses." Then they all came a step nearer. They were very fat and round. Their bodies were like sealskin jackets on a very stout person. Their heads were like sealskin muffs. Their legs were like sealskin boas. Their hands and feet were like sealskin tobacco pouches, and their faces were like seals' faces, inasmuch as they too were covered with sealskin. "Thank you so much for telling us," said George. "Good evening." "Keep on howling, Jane." But the dwarfs came a step nearer, muttering and whispering. Then the muttering stopped, and there was a silence so deep that Jane was afraid to howl in it. But it was a brown silence, and she had liked the white silence better. Then the chief dwarf came quite close and said, "What's that on your head?" And George felt it was all up, for he knew it was his father's sealskin cap. The dwarf did not wait for an answer. "It's made of one of us," he screamed. "Or else one of the seals. Our poor relations. Boy, now your fate is sealed." Looking at the wicked seal faces all around him, George and Jane felt like their fate was sealed indeed. The dwarf seized the children in their furry arms. George kicked, but it was no use kicking sealskin, and Jane howled, but the dwarves were getting used to that. They climbed up the dragon's side and dumped the children down on his icy spine, with their backs against the North Pole. You have no idea how cold it was. The kind of cold that makes you feel small and prickly inside your clothes, and makes you wish you had 20 times as many clothes to feel small and prickly inside of. The sealskin dwarfs tied George and Jane to the North Pole, and as they had no ropes, they bound them with snow wreaths, which were very strong, and they were made in a proper way. And they heaped up the fires very close and said, "Now the dragon will get warm, and when he gets warm, he will awake, and when he wakes up, he will be hungry. And when he is hungry, he will begin to eat, and the first thing he will eat will be you." The little sharp, many-colored flames sprang up like stalks of dream lilies, but no heat came to the children, and they grew colder and colder. "We shan't be very nice when the dragon does eat us. That's one comfort," said George. "We shall be turned into ice long before that." Suddenly there was a flapping of wings, and the great grouse perched up on the dragon's head and said, "Can I be of any assistance?" Now, by the time the children were so cold and so very, very cold that they had forgotten anything but that, and they could say nothing else. So the white grouse said, "One moment. I am only too grateful for this opportunity of showing my sense to your manly conduct about the firework." And the next moment there was a soft whispering rustle of wings overhead, and then fluttering slowly, softly down, came hundreds and thousands of little white fluffy feathers. They fell on George and Jane like snowflakes, and like flakes of fallen snow lying one above the other, they grew into a thicker and thicker covering, so that presently the children were buried under a heap of white feathers, and only their faces peeped out. "Oh, you dear, good, kind white grouse," said Jane. "But you'll be cold yourself, won't you, now that you've given us all your pretty dear feathers?" The white grouse laughed, and his laugh was echoed by thousands of soft bird voices. "Do you think all these feathers came out of one breast? There are hundreds and hundreds of us here, and every one of us can spare a tiny tuft or soft breast feathers to help keep two kind little hearts warm." Thus spoke the grouse, who certainly had very pretty manners. So now the children snuggled under the feathers and were warm. And when the sealskin dwarfs tried to take the feathers away, the grouse and his friends flew in their faces with flapping and screams and drove the dwarfs back. They are cowardly folk. The dragon had not moved yet, but then he might at any moment get warm enough to move. And though George and Jane were now warm, they were not comfortable nor easy in their minds. They had tried to explain to the grouse, but though he is polite, he is not clever, and he only said, "You've got a warm nest, and we'll see that no one takes it from you. What more can you possibly want?" Just then came a new, strange, jerky fluttering of wings far softer than the grouse's, and George and Jane cried out together, "Oh, do mind your wings in the fires!" For they saw at once that it was a great white Arctic moth. "What is the matter?" he said, settling on the dragon's tail. So they told him. "Sealskin, are they?" said the moth. "Just you wait a minute." He flew off very crookedly, dodging the flames, and presently he came back. And there were so many moths with him that it was as if a live sheet of white wingedness were suddenly drawn between the children and the stars. And then the doom of the bad sealskin dwarfs fell suddenly on them, for the great sheet of white wingedness broke up and fell as snow falls. And it fell upon the sealskin dwarfs, and every snowflake of it was a live, fluttering, hungry moth that buried its greedy nose deep in the sealskin's fur. Grown-up people will tell you that it is not moths, but moths' children who eat fur. But this is only when they are trying to deceive you. When they are not thinking about you, they say, "I fear the moths have gotten at my ermine tippet," or "Your poor Aunt Emma had a lovely sable cloak, but it was eaten by moths." And now there were more moths than had ever been together in this world before, all settling on the sealskin dwarfs. The dwarfs did not see the danger until it was too late. Then they called for camphor and bitter apple and oil of lavender and yellow soap and borax. And some of the dwarfs even started to get these things. But long before any of them could get to the chemist, all was over. The moths ate and ate and ate, till the sealskin dwarfs, being sealskin throughout, even to the empty hearts of them, were eaten down to the very life. And they fell one by one on the snow, and so came to their end. And all around the North Pole the snow was brown with their flat, bare pelts. Oh, thank you. Thank you, darling Arctic moth, cried Jane. You are good. I do hope you haven't eaten enough to disagree with you afterwards. Millions of moth voices answered with the laughter as soft as moth wings. We should be we should be a poor set of fellows if we couldn't overeat ourselves once in a while to oblige a friend. And off they all fluttered, and the white grouse flew off, and the sealskin dwarfs were all dead, and the fires went out, and George and Jane were left alone in the dark with the dragon. Oh dear, said Jane, that is the worst of all. We've no friends to help us left, said George. He never thought that the dragon himself might help them. But then that was an idea that could have never occurred to any boy. It grew colder and colder and colder, and even under the grouse feathers the children shivered. Then, when it was so cold that it could not manage to be any colder without breaking the thermometer, it stopped. And then the dragon uncurled himself from around the North Pole and stretched his long, icy length over the snow and said, This is something I like. How faint those fires did make me feel. The fact was, the sealskin dwarfs had gone the wrong way to work. The dragon had been frozen so long that now he was nothing but solid ice all through, and the fires only made him feel as if he were going to die. When the fires went out, he felt quite well and very hungry. He looked around for something to eat, but he never noticed George and Jane because they were frozen to his back. He moved slowly off, and the snow wreaths that bound the children to the pole gave way with a snap, and there the dragon crawling south with Jane and George on his great scaly, icy, shining back. Of course, the dragon had to go south if he went anywhere, because when you get to the North Pole, there's no other way to go. The dragon rattled and tinkled as he went, exactly like the cut glass chandelier when you touch it, as you're strictly forbidden to do so. Of course, there are a million ways of going south from the North Pole, so you will own that it was lucky for George and Jane when the dragon took the right way and suddenly got his heavy feet on the great slide. Off he went, full speed between the starry lamps toward Forest Hill and the Crystal Palace. He is going to take us home, said Jane. Oh, he is a good dragon. I am glad. George was rather glad too, though neither of the children felt at all sure of their welcome, especially as their feet were wet and they were bringing a strange dragon home with them. They went very fast because dragons can go uphill as easily as down. You would not understand why if I told you, because you are only in long division at present. Yet if you want me to tell you, so that you can show off to other children, I will. It is because dragons can get their tails into the fourth dimension and hold on there. And when you can do that, everything else is easy. The dragon went very fast, only stopping to eat the collector and the sportsman, who were still struggling to go up the slide vainly, because they had no tails and they had never heard of the fourth dimension. When the dragon got to the end of the slide, he crawled very slowly across the dark field. Beyond the field, there was a bonfire next to the next door garden at Forest Hill. He went slower and slower, and in the bonfire field he stopped altogether. And because the Arctic regions had not got down so far as that, and because the bonfire was very hot, the dragon began to melt and melt and melt. And before the children knew what he was doing, they found themselves sitting in a large pool of water, and their boots were as wet, and there was not a bit of dragon left. So they went indoors. Of course, some grown-ups or other noticed at once that the boots of George and Jane were wet and muddy, and they had both been sitting down in a very damp place, so they were sent to bed immediately. It was long past their time, anyhow. Now, if you are an inquiring mind, not at all nice things in the little child who reads fairy tales, you will want to know how it is that since the sealskin dwarfs have all been killed and the fires have all been let out, the aurora borealis shines on cold nights as brightly as ever. My dear, I do not know. I'm not too proud to own that. There are some things I know nothing about, and this is one of them. But I do know that whoever has lighted those fires again It is certainly not the seal-skinned dwarfs. They were all eaten by moths, and moth-eaten things are of no use, even to light fires. Okay, that was a bonkers story. I appreciate that. Double A, yes, yes. How are you doing? It's good to see you. Super appreciate you guys. Take a peek here. There's one thing that I did forget to do. 29 likes. That's crazy. Appreciate you guys. 13 people in. 13 ghosty readers. Welcome home, Boo. I appreciate that. I'm glad that you made it home. Now it's finally time to kick back, get your feet up. While we get into Chapter 5, The Island of the Nine Whirlpools. I did like that story. I liked how it all came down to the different things that the older people used to tell them not to. Like, do as you're told was the second name of the story. So I really, really liked that it was all about them doing things that people told them that they shouldn't. Let me tell you what I didn't like. I didn't like that the dragon wasn't as prominent as in the other stories, because the dragons actually had bigger roles. Ernie! How's it going, Ernie? Just in time to start Chapter 5. So yeah, I did like that story, but I was very much into the personalities of the other stories. Have a great night. Need to go cook dinner and deal with my boys. Bye, everybody. I'll see you all later. Have a great night, Mrs. 5150. Appreciate you being here. And I will message you later about the cards. Chapter 5, The Island of the Nine Whirlpools. The dark arch that led to the witch's cave was hung with a black and yellow fringe of live snakes. As the queen went in, keeping carefully in the middle of the arch, all the snakes lifted their wicked flat heads and stared at her with their wicked yellow eyes. You know, it is not good manners to stare, even at royalty, except, of course, for cats. And the snakes had been so badly brought up that they even put their tongues out at the poor lady. Nasty, thin, sharp tongues they were, too. Now, the queen's husband was, of course, the king, and besides being a king, he was an enchanter, and considered to be quite at the top of his profession. So he was very wise, and he knew when kings and queens want children, the queen always goes to see a witch. So he gave the queen the witch's address, and the queen called on her, though she was very frightened and did not like it at all. The witch was sitting by the fire of sticks, stirring something bubbly in a shiny copper cauldron. "What do you want, my dear?" she said to the queen. "Oh, if you please," said the queen. "I want a baby, a very nice one. I don't want any expense spared. My husband said—" "Oh, yes," said the witch. "I know all about him. And so you want a child. Do you know it will bring you sorrow?" "It will bring me joy first," said the queen. "Great sorrow," said the witch. "Greater joy," said the queen. Then the witch said, "Well, have your own way. I suppose it is as much as your place is worth to go back without it?" "The king would be very much annoyed," said the poor queen. "Well, well," said the witch. "What will you give me for the child?" "Anything you ask for, and all I have," said the queen. "Then give me your gold crown." The queen took it off quickly. "And your necklace of blue sapphires?" The queen unfastened it. "And your pearl bracelets?" The queen unclasped them. "And your ruby clasps?" And the queen undid the clasp. "Now the lilies from your breast." The queen gathered together the lilies. "And the diamonds of your little bright shoe buckles?" The queen pulled off her shoes. Then the witch stirred and stuff that was in the cauldron, and one by one she threw in the gold crown, and the sapphire necklace, and the pearl bracelets, and the ruby clasps, and the diamonds of the little bright shoe buckles, and last of all she threw in the lilies. The stuff in the cauldron boiled up in foaming flashes of yellow and blue and red and white and silver, and sent out a sweet scent. And presently the witch poured it out into a pot, and set it to cool in the doorway among the snakes. Then she said to the queen, "Your child will have hair as golden as your crown, eyes as blue as your sapphires. The red of your rubies will lie on its lips, and its skin will be clear and pale as your pearls. Its soul will be white and sweet as your lilies, and your diamonds will be no clearer than its wits." "Oh, thank you," said the queen. "And when will it come?" "You will find it when you get home." "And won't you have something for yourself?" asked the queen. "Any little thing you fancy? Would you like a country, or a sack of jewels?" "Nothing, thank you," said the witch. "I could make more diamonds in a day than I should wear in a year." "Well, but do let me do some little thing for you," the queen went on. "Aren't you tired of being a witch? Wouldn't you like to be a duchess or a princess or something like that?" "There is one thing I should rather like," said the witch, "but it's hard to get in my trade." "Oh, tell me what," said the queen. "I should like someone to love me," said the witch. Then the queen threw her arms around the witch's neck and kissed her 100 times. "Why," she said, "I love you better than my life. You've given me the baby, and the baby shall love you too." "Perhaps it will," said the witch. "And when the sorrow comes, send for me. Each of your 50 kisses will be a spell to bring me to you. Now drink up your medicine. There's a dear, and run along home." So the queen drank the stuff in the pot, which was quite cool by this time, and she went out under the fringe of snakes, and they all behaved like good Sunday school children. Some of them even tried to drop a curtsy to her as she went by, though that was not as easy when you're hanging wrong way up by your tail. But the snakes knew the queen was friend with their mistress, so of course they had to do their best to be civil. When the queen got home, sure enough, there was a baby living in the cradle in the royal arms blazoned on it, crying as naturally as possible. It had pink ribbon to tie up its sleeves, so the queen saw at once it was a girl. When the king knew this, he tore his black hair with fury. "Oh, you silly, silly queen," he said. Why didn't I marry a clever lady? Did you think I went to all the trouble and expense of sending you to a witch to get a girl? You knew well enough it was a boy I wanted, a boy, an heir, a prince, to learn all my magic and my enchantments, and to rule the kingdom after me. I'll bet a crown my crown," he said. "You'll never even thought to tell the witch what kind you wanted, did you now?" And the queen hung her head and had to confess that she had only asked for a child. "Very well, madam," said the king. "Very well, have your own way, and make the most of your daughter while she is a child." The queen did all the years of her life, and never held half so much happiness as now lived in each of the moments when she held up her little baby in her arms. And the years went on, and the king grew more and more clever at magic, and more disagreeable at home. And the princess grew more beautiful and more dear every day she lived. The queen and princess were feeding the goldfish in the courtyard fountains with crumbs of the princess's 18th birthday cake, when the king came to the courtyard looking as black as thunder, with his black raven hopping after him. He shook his fist at his family, as indeed he generally did whenever he met them, for he was not a king with pretty home manners. The raven sat down on the edge of the marble basin and tried to peck the goldfish. It was all he could do to show that he was in the same temper as his master. "A girl indeed," said the king angrily. I wonder you can dare to look me in the face when you remember how your silliness had spoiled everything." "You ought to speak to my mother like that," said the princess. She was 18, and it came to her suddenly and all in a moment that she was a grown-up. So she spoke out. The king did not utter a word for several minutes. He was too angry. But the queen said, "My dear child, don't interfere," quite crossly, for she was frightened. And to her husband she said, "My dear, why do you go on worrying about it? Our daughter is not a boy, it is true, but she can marry a clever man who can rule your kingdom after you and learn as much magic as ever you cared to teach him." Then the king found his tongue. "If she does marry," he said slowly, "her husband will have to be a very clever man. Oh, yes, very clever indeed. And he will have to know a very great deal more magic than I shall ever care to teach him." The queen knew at once by the king's tone that he was going to be disagreeable. "Ah," she said, "don't punish the child because she loves her mother." "I'm not going to punish her for that," said he. "I am only going to teach her to respect her father." And without another word he went off to his laboratory and worked all night, boiling different colored things in crucibles and copying charms and curious twisted letters from old brown books with mold stains in their yellowy pages. The next day his plan was all arranged. He took the poor princess to the Lone Tower, which stands on an island in the sea, 1,000 miles from anywhere. He gave her a dowry and set a handsome income on her. He engaged a competent dragon to look after her, and also a respectable griffin whose birth and upbringing he knew all about. And he said, "Here you shall stay, my dear, respectful daughter, till that clever man comes to marry you. He'll have to be clever enough to sail a ship through the 9 whirlpools that spin round the island, and to kill the dragon and the griffin. Till he comes, you'll never get any older or any wiser. No doubt he will come soon. You can employ yourself in embroidering your wedding gown. I wish you joy, my dutiful child." And his carriage, drawn by live thunderbolts, thunder travels very fast, rose into the air and disappeared. And the poor princess was left, with the dragon and the griffin, on the island of the 9 whirlpools. The queen, left at home, cried for a day and a night, and then she remembered the witch had called to her. And the witch came, and the queen told her. The witch and called to her. Uh, "For the sake of the twice 25 kisses you gave me," said the witch, "I will help you. But it is the last thing I can do. It is not much. Your daughter is under a spell, and I can take you to her. But if I do, you will have to be turned to stone, and to stay, so till the spell is taken off the child." "I would be a stone for 1,000 years," said the poor queen, "if at the end of them I could see my dear again." So the witch took the queen in the carriage drawn by live sunbeams, which travel more quickly than anything else in the world and much quicker than thunder, and so away and away to the Lone Tower on the island of the 9 whirlpools. And there was the princess sitting on the floor in the best room of the Lone Tower, crying as if her heart would break. And the dragon and the griffin were sitting, primly, on each side of her. "Oh, mother, mother, mother!" she cried, and hung around the queen's neck as if she would never let go. "Now," said the queen, when they had all cried as much as was good for them, "I can do 1 or 2 other little things for you. Time shall not make the princess sad. All days will be like one day till her deliverer comes. And you and I, dear queen, will sit in stone at the gate of the tower. In doing this for you, I lose all my witch's powers. And when I say the spell that changes you to stone, I shall change with you. And if ever we come out of the stone, I shall be a witch no more, but only a happy old woman." Then the 3 kissed one another again and again, and the witch said the spell, and on each side of the door there was now a stone lady. One of them had a stone crown on its head, and a stone scepter in its hands, and the other held a stone tablet with the words on it, which the griffin and dragon could not read, though they had both been very good education. And now all day seemed like one day to the princess, and the next day always seemed the day when her mother would come out of the stone and kiss her again. And the years went slowly by. The wicked king died, and someone else took his kingdom, and many things were changed in the world. But the island did not change for the 9 whirlpools, nor the griffin, nor dragon, nor the 2 stone ladies, and all the time, from the very first, the day of the princess' deliverance was coming, creeping nearer and nearer and nearer. But no one saw it coming, except the princess, and she only in dreams. And the years went on in tens and in hundreds, and still the 9 whirlpools spun around, roaring in triumph the story of many a good ship that had gone down in their swirl, bearing with it some prince who had tried to win the princess and her dowry. And the great sea knew all the other stories of the princess who had came from very far, and had seen the whirlpools, and had shaken their wise young heads, and said, "'Bout ship!" and gone discreetly home to their nice, safe, comfortable kingdoms. But no one told the story of the deliverer who was to come, and the years went by. Oh no, I'm so glad everything is good. So glad everything is good, Katrina. And so glad to have you back. We hit 30 likes. We're just going to take a breather in this chapter. These chapters are incredibly long. But I like sitting in this chair. Like my back feels great, good as it has felt. I'm glad you had a great birthday, Ernie. Now, after more scores of years than you would like to add up on your slate, a certain sailor boy sailed on the high seas with his uncle, who was a skilled skipper. And the boy could reef a sail and coil a rope and keep the ship's nose steady before the wind. And he was as good a boy as you could find in a month of Sundays, and worthy to be a prince. Now there is something which is wiser than all the world, and it knows when people are worthy to be princes. And this something came from a farther side of the 7th world, and whispered in a boy's ear. And the boy heard, though he did not know he heard. And he looked out over the black seas with the white foam horses galloping over it, and far away he saw a light. And he said to the skipper, his uncle, "What light is that?" And the skipper said, "All good things defend you, Nigel. From sailing near the light, it is not mentioned in all charts, but it is marked on the old chart I steer by, which is my father's father before me, and his father's father before him. It was the light that shines from the lone tower that stands above the 9 whirlpools. And when my father's father was young, he heard, not from a very old man, his great-great-great-grandfather, that in the tower an enchanted princess, fairer than the day, waits to be delivered. But there is no deliverance. So never steer that way, and think no more of princesses, for that is only an idle tale. But the whirlpools are quite real." So, of course, from that day Nigel thought of nothing else. And as he sailed higher and thither upon the seas, he saw from time to time the light that shone out to sea across the wild swirl of the 9 whirlpools. And one night, when the ship was at anchor and the skipper asleep in his bunk, Nigel launched the ship's boat and steered alone over the dark sea towards the light. He dared not go very near till daylight should show him what, indeed, were the whirlpools he had to dread. But when the dawn came, he saw the lone tower standing dark against the pink and primrose of the earth, and about its base a sullen swirl of black water. And he heard the wonderful roar of it. So he hung off and on, all that day, and for 6 days besides, and when he had watched 7 days, he knew something. For you are certain to know something if you give for 7 days your whole thought to it, even though it had only been the first declination, or the 9 times table, or the dates of the Norman kings. What he knew was this, that for 5 minutes out of the 1440 minutes that make up a day, the whirlpool slipped into silence, while the tide went down and left the yellow sand bare. And every day this happened. but every day was 5 minutes earlier than it had been the day before. He made sure of this by the ship's chronometer, which he had thoughtfully brought with him. So on the 8th day, at 5 minutes before noon, Nigel got ready, and when the whirlpool suddenly stopped, whirling and the tide sank, like water in a basin that has a hole in it, he stuck to his oars and put his back to the shore and presently beached the boat on the yellow sand. Then he dragged it into a cave and sat down to wait. By 5 minutes, 1 second past noon, the whirlpools were black and busy again, and Nigel, peeping out of his cave, and on the rocky ledge overhanging the sea, he saw a princess as beautiful as day, with golden hair and a green gown, and he went out to meet her. "I have come to save you," he said. "How darling and beautiful you are!" "You are very good and very clever and very dear," said the princess, smiling and giving him both her hands. He shed a little kiss in each hand before he let them go. "So now, when the tide is low again," he said, "I will take you away in my boat." "But what about the dragon and the griffin?" asked the princess. "Dear me," said Nigel, "I didn't know about them. I suppose I can kill them." "Don't be a silly boy," said the princess, pretending to be very grown up, for though she had only been on the island time only knows how many years, she was just 18, and she still liked pretending. "You haven't a sword or a shield or anything." "Well, don't the beasts ever go to sleep?" "Why, yes," said the princess, "but only once in 24 hours, and then the dragon is turned to stone. But the griffin has dreams. The griffin sleeps at tea time every day, but the dragon sleeps every day for 5 minutes, and every day it is 3 minutes later than it was the day before." "What time does he sleep today?" asked Nigel. "At 11, said the princess. "Ah," said Nigel. "Can you do sums?" "No," said the princess sadly. "I was never good at them." "Then I must," said Nigel. "I can, but it's slow work, and it makes me very unhappy. It'll take me days and days." "Don't begin yet," said the princess. "You'll have plenty of time to be unhappy when I'm not with you. Tell me all about yourself." So he did. And then she told them all about herself. "I know I've been here a long time," she said, "but I don't know what time is. And I am very busy sewing silk flowers on my gold gown for my wedding day. And the griffin does the housework. His wings are so convenient and feathery for sweeping and dusting, and the dragon does the cooking. He's hot inside, so of course it's no trouble for him. And though I don't know what time is, I'm sure it's time for my wedding day, because my golden gown only wants one more white daisy on the sleeve and a lily in the bosom of it, and then it will be ready." Just then they heard a dry, rustling clatter on the rocks above them, and a snorting sound. "It's the dragon," said the princess hurriedly. "Goodbye, be a good boy, and get your sum done." And she ran away and left him to his arithmetic. Now the sum was this: if the whirlpools stop and the tide goes down once in every 24 hours, and they do it for 5 minutes earlier every 24 hours, and if the dragon sleeps every day and he does it 3 minutes later every day, in how many days and at what time in the day will the tide go down 3 minutes before the dragon falls asleep? It is quite simple sum, as you see. You could do it in a minute because you have been to a good school and have taken pains with your lessons. But it was quite otherwise with poor Nigel. He sat down to work out his sum with a piece of chalk on a smooth stone. He tried it by practice in the unitary method, by multiplication, and by rule of 3 3/4. He tried it by decimals and by compound interest. He tried it by square roots and by cube roots. He tried it by addition, simple and otherwise. And he tried it by mixed examples of vulgar fractions. But it was all of no use. Then he tried to do the sum by algebra, by simple and quadratic equations, by trigonometry and logarithms, and by conic sections. But it would not do. He got an answer every time, it is true, but it was always a different one, and he could not feel sure which answer was right. And just as he was feeling how much more important than anything else it is to be able to do your sums, the princess came back, and now it was getting dark. "Why,
You've been 7 hours over that sum, she said, and you haven't done it yet? Look here. This is what is written on the tablet of the statue by the lower gate. It has figures on it. Perhaps it is the answer to the sum. She held it out to him in a big white magnolia leaf, and he had scratched on it with a pin of her pearl brooch, and had turned brown where she had scratched it, as magnolia leaves will do. Nigel read, "After 9 days, T2, 24, D2, 27, ANS, PS. The griffin is artificial. R." He clapped his hands softly. "Dear princess," he said, "I know that's the right answer. It says R, too, you see, and I'll just prove it." So he hastily worked the sum backwards in decimals and equations and conic sections and all the rules he could think of, and it came right every time. "So now we must wait," he said. And they waited. And every day the princess came to see Nigel and brought him food cooked by the dragon. And he lived in his cave and talked to her when she was there and thought about her when she was not. And they were both happy as the longest day in summer. Then at last came the day. Nigel and the princess laid their plans. "You're sure he won't hurt you, my only treasure?" said Nigel. "Quite," said the princess. "I only wish I were half as sure that he wouldn't hurt you." "My princess," he said tenderly, "two great powers are on our side, the power of love and the power of arithmetic. Those two are stronger than anything else in this world." So when the tide began to go down, Nigel and the princess ran out onto the sands, and there, in full sight of the terrace where the dragon kept watch, Nigel took his princess in his arms and kissed her. The griffin was busy sweeping the stairs of the lone tower, but the dragon saw, and he gave a cry of rage, and it was like 20 engines all letting off steam at the top of their voices inside Cannon Street Station. And the two lovers stood looking up at the dragon. He was dreadful to look at. His head was white with age, and his beard was grown so long that he caught his claws in it as he walked, and his wings were white with the salt that had settled on them from the spray of the sea. His tail was long and thick and jointed and white, and had little legs to it, any number of them, far too many, so that it looked like a very large fat silkworm, and his claws were as long as lessons and as sharp as bayonets. "Goodbye, love," cried Nigel, and ran out across the yellow sand towards the sea. He had one end of a cord tied to his arm. The dragon was clambering down the face of the cliff, and the next moment he was crawling and writhing and sprawling and wriggling across the beach after Nigel, making great holes in the sand with his heavy feet. And the very end of his tail, where there was no legs, made, as it dragged, a mark in the sand such as you make when you launch a boat. And he breathed fire till the wet sand hissed again, and the water of the little rock pools got quite frightened, and all went off in a steam. Still Nigel held on, and the dragon after him. The princess could see nothing for the steam, and she stood crying bitterly. But she still holding on tight with her right hand to the other end of the cord that Nigel had told her to hold. While with her left she held the ship's chronometer, and looked at it through her tears, and as he had bidden her to look, so as to know when to pull the rope. On went Nigel over the sand, and on went the dragon after him, and the tide was low, and sleepy little waves lapped the sand's edges. Now at the lip of the water, Nigel paused and looked back, and the dragon made a bound, beginning to scream of rage that was like all the engines of the railways in England. But it never uttered the second half of that scream, for now it knew suddenly that it was very sleepy. It turned to hurry back to dry land, because sleeping near whirlpools is so unsafe. But before it reached the shore, sleep caught it and turned it to stone. Nigel, seeing this, ran shoreward for his life, and the tide began to flow in, and the time of the whirlpool sleep was nearly over, and he stumbled and waded and he swam. And the princess pulled for dear life at the cord in the other hand, and pulled him up on the dry shelf of rock just as the great sea dashed in and made itself once more into the girdle of 9 whirlpools all around the island. But the dragon was asleep under the whirlpools, and when he woke up from being asleep, he was found to be drowned. So there was the end of him. Now there's only the griffin, said Nigel. And the princess said, yes, only. And she kissed Nigel and went back to sew the last leaf of her last lily on the bosom of her wedding gown. She thought and thought of what was written on the stone about the griffin being artificial. And next day she said to Nigel, you know, a griffin is half a lion and half an eagle, and the other 2 halves, when they've joined, make a leogriff. But I've never seen him, yet I have an idea. So they talked it over and arranged everything. When the griffin fell asleep that afternoon at tea time, Nigel went softly behind him and trod on his tail. And at the same time, Princess cried, look out, there's a lion behind you. And the griffin, waking suddenly from his dreams, twisted his large neck around to look for the lion, saw a lion's flank, and fastened his eagle beak in it. For the griffin had been artificially made by the king enchanter, and the 2 halves had never really got used to each other. So now the eagle half of the griffin, who was still rather sleepy, believed that it was fighting a lion, and the lion part, being half asleep, thought that it was fighting an eagle. And the whole griffin, in its deep drowsiness, hadn't the sense to pull itself together and remember what it was made of. So the griffin rolled over and over, one end of it fighting with the other, till the eagle end pecked the lion end to death, and the lion end tore the eagle end with its claws, till it died. And so the griffin, that was made of a lion and an eagle, perished, exactly as if it had been made of kilkenny cats. Poor griffin, said the princess. It was very good at housework. I always liked it better than the dragon. It wasn't so hot-tempered. At that moment there was a soft, silky rush behind the princess, and there was her mother, the queen, who had slipped out of the stone statue at the moment the griffin was dead, and now came hurrying to take her dear daughter into her arms. The witch was clambering slowly off her pedestal. She was a little stiff from standing still so long. When they had all explained everything over and over to each other as many times as was good for them, the witch said, well, but what about the whirlpools? And Nigel said he didn't know. And then the witch said, I'm not a witch anymore. I'm only a happy old woman. But I know some things still. Those whirlpools were made by the enchanter king's dropping 9 drops of his blood into the sea. And his blood was so wicked that the sea has been trying ever since to get rid of it. And that made whirlpools. Now you've only got to go out at low tide. So Nigel understood and went out at low tide and found in the sandy hollow left by the first whirlpool the great red ruby. That was the first drop of the wicked king's blood. The next day Nigel found another, the next day another, and so on till the 9th day, and then the sea was smooth as glass. The 9 rubies were used afterwards in agriculture. You had only to throw them out into a field if you wanted it plowed. Then the whole surface of the land turned itself over in its anxiety to get rid of something so wicked, and in the morning the field was found to be plowed, and thoroughly as any young man at Oxford. So the wicked king did some good after all. When the sea was smooth, ships came from far and wide bringing people to hear the wonderful story. And the beautiful palace was built, and the princess was married to Nigel in her gold dress, and they lived happily as long as was good for them. The dragon still lies, a stone dragon, on the sand, and in the low tide little children play around him and over him. But the pieces that were left of the griffin were buried under the herb bed in the palace garden, because it had been so good at housework, and it wasn't its fault that it had been made so badly and put to such poor work as guarding a lady from her lover. I have no doubt that you will wish to know what the princess lived on during the long years when the dragon did the cooking. My dear, she lived on her income, and that was the thing a great many people would like to be able to do. Okay, that was a weird end to the story, but I can dig it. Hey, what's up, ET? It's good to see you. Welcome to story time. Still got 13 ghosty readers in here. We'll probably do one more. I'm feeling it. I am probably going to grab another drink real quick, though, so bear with me. I'm going to grab another drink, and I'll be right back. Appreciate everybody being here on this beautiful Monday. Perfect. Appreciate you guys. Oh. Ooh, the Dragon Tamers. That sounds like a good one. All right. Get some of these neck stretches I've been doing. All right. Chapter 5. The Dragon Tamers. There was once an old, old castle. It was so old that its walls and towers and turrets and gateways and arches had crumbled to ruins. And of its old splendor there was only 2 little rooms left. And it was here that John the blacksmith had set up his forge. He was too poor to live in a proper house, and no one asked any rent for the rooms in the ruin, because all the lords of the castle were dead and gone this many a year. So there John blew his bellows and hammered his iron and did all the work which came his way. This was not much, because most of the trade went to the mayor of the town, who was also a blacksmith in quite a large way of business, and had his huge forge facing the square of the town, and had 12 apprentices, all hammering like a nest of woodpeckers, and 12 journeymen to order the apprentices about, and a patent forge, and a self-acting hammer, and electric bellows, and all the things handsome about him. So, of course, the townspeople, whenever they wanted a horse shod or a shaft mended, they went to the mayor. John the blacksmith struggled on as best he could, with a few odd jobs from travelers and strangers who did not know what a superior forge the mayor's was. The 2 rooms were warm and weather-tight, but not very large, so the blacksmith got into the way of keeping his old iron, his odds and ends, his faggots, and his 2 pences worth of coal in the great dungeon down underneath the castle. It was a very fine dungeon indeed, with a handsome vaulted roof and big iron rings, whose staples were built into the walls. Very strong and convenient for tying captives to. And at one end was a broken flight of wide steps leading down no one knew where. Even the lords of the castle in the good old times had never known where those steps led to. But everyone now and then they would kick a prisoner down the steps in their light-hearted, hopeful way, and sure enough, the prisoners never came back. The blacksmith never dared to go beyond the 7th step, and no more have I. So I know no more than he did what was at the bottom of those stairs. The purpose of a comma is very important. John the blacksmith had a wife and a little baby. When his wife was not doing the housework, she used to nurse the baby and cry, remembering the happy days when she lived with her father, who kept 17 cows and lived quiet in the country. And when John used to come courting her in the summer evenings as smart, with a posy in his buttonhole. And now John's hair is getting gray, and there was hardly ever enough to eat. As for the baby, it cried a good deal at odd times, but at night, When its mother had settled down to sleep, it would always begin to cry, quiet as a matter of course, so that she hardly got any rest at all. This made her very tired. The baby could make up for its bad nights during the day if it liked, but the poor mother couldn't. So whenever she had nothing to do, she used to sit and cry because she was tired out with work and worry. One evening, the blacksmith was busy with his forge. He was making a goat shoe for the goat of the very rich lady who wished to see how the goat liked being shod, and also whether the shoe would come to 5 pence or 7 pence before she ordered the whole set. This was the only order John had had that week, and as he worked, his wife sat and nursed the baby who, for a wonder, was not crying. Presently, over the noise of the bellows and over the clank of the iron, there came another sound. The blacksmith and his wife looked at each other. "I heard nothing," he said. "Neither did I," said she. But the noise grew louder, and the two were so anxious not to hear it that he hammered away at the goat shoe harder than he ever hammered in his life, and she began to sing to the baby, a thing she had not had the heart to do for weeks. And through the blowing and hammering and singing, the noise came louder and louder, and the more they tried not to hear it, the more they had to. It was like the noise of some great creature purring, 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 and the reason they did not want to believe they really heard it was that it came from the great dungeon down below, where the iron was, where the old iron was, and the firewood, and the 2 pence worth of coal, and the broken steps that went down to the dark end that no one knew where. "Can't be anything in that dungeon," said the blacksmith, wiping his face. "Why, I shall have to go down there after more coals in a minute." "There isn't anything there, of course. How could there be?" said his wife. But they tried so hard to believe that there could be nothing that presently they very nearly did believe it. Then the blacksmith took his shovel in one hand and riveting hammer in the other, and hung the old stable lantern on his little finger and went down to get the coals. "I'm not taking the hammer because I think there is something there," said he, "but it is handy for breaking up large lumps of coal." "I quite understand," said his wife, who had brought the coal home in her apron that very afternoon, and knew that it was all coal dust. So he went down the winding stairs to the dungeon and stood at the bottom of the steps, holding the lantern above his head, just to see that the dungeon really was empty as usual. Half of it was empty as usual, except for the old iron and odds and ends and the firewood and the coals. But the other side was not empty. It was quite full. And what it was full of was dragon. "It must have come up those nasty broken steps from the goodness knows where," said the blacksmith to himself, trembling all over as he tried to creep back up the winding stairs. But the dragon was too quick for him. It put out a great claw and caught him by the leg, and as it moved it rattled like a bunch of keys, or like a sheet of iron. They make thunder out of it in pantomimes. "No, you don't," said the dragon in a spluttering voice like a damp squib. "Dearie, dearie me," said poor John, trembling more than ever in the claw of the dragon. "Here is a nice end for a respectable blacksmith." The dragon seemed very much struck by his remark. "Do you mind saying that again?" said he politely. So John said again, very distinctly, "Here is a nice end for a respectable blacksmith?" "I didn't know," said the dragon. "Fancy now, you're the very man I wanted." "So I understood you to say before," said John, his teeth chattering. "Oh, I don't mean what you mean," said the dragon, "but I should like to do you to do a job for me. One of my wings has got some of the rivets out of it just above the joint. Could you put it to rights?" "I might, sir," said John, politely, for you must always be polite as possible to a customer, even if he is a dragon. "A master craftsman. You are a master, of course. Can see in a minute what's wrong?" the dragon went on. "Just come around here and feel my plates, will you?" John timidly went around, and when the dragon took his claw away, and sure enough, The dragon's wing was hanging loose, and several of his plates near the joint certainly wanted riveting. The dragon seemed to be made almost entirely of iron armor. A sort of tawny red rust color it was, from damp, no doubt, and under it he seemed to be covered with something furry. All the blacksmith welled up in John's heart, and he felt more at ease. "You could certainly do with a rivet or two, sir," he said. "In fact, you want a good many." "Well, get to work then," said the dragon. "You mend my wing, and I'll go out and eat up all the town. And if you make a really smart job of it, I'll eat you there last." "I don't want to be eaten last, sir," said John. "Well, then I'll eat you first," said the dragon. "I don't want that, sir, either," said John. "Go on with you, you silly man," said the dragon. "You don't know your own silly mind. Come, set to work." "I don't like this job, sir," said John, "and that's the truth. I know how easily accidents happen, and all fair and smooth, but please rivet me, and I'll eat you last. And then get to work and give a gentleman a bit of nip or dig under his rivets, and then it's fire and smoke, and no apologies will meet the case." "Upon my word of honor as a dragon," said the other. "I know you wouldn't do it on purpose, sir," said John, "but any gentleman will give a jump and a sniff if he's nipped, and one of your sniffs would be enough for me. Now, if you'd just let me fasten you up." "It would be so undignified," objected the dragon. "We always fasten a horse up," said John, "and he's a noble animal." "It is very well," said the dragon, "but how do I know you'd untie me again when you'd rivet me? Give me something to pledge. What do you value most?" "My hammer," said John. "A blacksmith is nothing without a hammer." "But you'd want that for riveting me. You must think of something else, and at once, or I'll eat you first." At this moment the baby in the room above began to scream. Its mother had been so quiet that it thought she had settled down for the night, and that it was time to begin. "Whatever's that?" said the dragon, starting so that every plate on his body rattled. "It's only the baby," said John. "What's that?" asked the dragon. "Something you value?" "Well, yes, sir, rather," said the blacksmith. "Then bring it here," said the dragon, "and I'll take care of it till you're done riveting me, and you shall tie me up." "All right, sir," said John, "but I ought to warn you, babies are poison to dragons, so I don't deceive you. It's all right to touch, but you don't want to go putting it in your mouth. I shouldn't like to see any harm come of a nice-looking gentleman like you." The dragon purred at the compliment and said, "All right, I'll be careful. Now go fetch the thing, whatever it is." So John ran up the steps as quickly as he could, for he knew that if the dragon got impatient before it was fastened, it could heave up the roof of the dungeon with one heave of its back and kill them all in the ruins. His wife was asleep, in spite of the baby's cries, and John picked up the baby and took it down and put it between the dragon's front paws. "You just purr to it, sir, and it'll be good as gold." So the dragon purred, and his purring pleased the baby so much that it stopped crying. Then John rummaged among the heap of old iron and found there some heavy chains and a great collar that had been made in the days when men sang over their work and put their hearts into it, so that the things they made were strong enough to bear the weight of 1,000 years, let alone a dragon. John fastened the dragon up with the collar and the chains, and when he had padlocked them all on safety, he set to work on how many rivets he would be needing. 6, 8, 10, 20, 40, said he. "I haven't half enough rivets in the shop, if you'll excuse me, sir. I'll step around to another forge and get a few dozen. Won't be a minute." And off he went, leaving the baby between the dragon's forepaws, laughing and crowing with pleasure at the very large purr of it. John ran as hard as he could into town and found the mayor and corporation. "There's a dragon in my dungeon," said he. "I've chained him up. Now come and help me get my baby away." And he told them all about it. But they all happened to have engagements for that evening. So they praised John's cleverness and said that we're quite content to leave the matter in his hands. "But what about my baby?" said John. Oh, well, said the mayor, if anything should happen, I will always be able to remember that your baby perished in a good cause. So John went home again and told his wife some of the tale. You've given the baby to the dragon? She cried. You unnatural parent. Hush, said John. And he told her some more. Now, he said, I'm going down. After I've been down, you can go. And if you keep your head by the boy, we'll be all right. So down went the blacksmith, and there was the dragon purring away with all his might to keep the baby quiet. Hurry up, can't you? He said. I can't keep this noise all night. I'm very sorry, sir, said the blacksmith, but all the shops are shut. The job must wait till morning. And don't forget, you promised to take care of that baby. You'll find it a little wearing, I'm afraid. Good night, sir. And the dragon had purred till he was quite out of breath, so now he stopped. And as soon as everything was quiet, the baby thought everyone must have settled for the night, and that it was time to begin his scream. So it began. Oh dear, said the dragon, this is awful. He patted the baby with his claw, but it screamed more than ever. And I'm so tired, too, said the dragon. And I did so hope I should have a good night. Baby went on screaming. There'll be no peace for me after this, said the dragon. It's hard to ruin everyone's nerves. Hush! Then and he tried to quiet the baby as if he had been a young dragon, but when he began to sing Hush-a-bye Dragon, the baby screamed more and more and more. I can't keep it quiet, said the dragon, and then suddenly he saw a woman sitting on the steps. Here, I say, he said, do you know anything about babies? I do, a little, said the mother. Then I wish you'd take this one and let me get some sleep, said the dragon, yawning. You can bring it back in the morning before the blacksmith comes. So the mother picks up the baby and took it upstairs and told her husband, and they went to bed happy, for they had caught the dragon and saved the baby. The next day John went down to explain carefully to the dragon exactly how matters stood, and he got an iron gate with a grating to it and set it up at the foot of the steps, and the dragon mewed furiously for days and days. But when he found it was no good, he was quiet. So now John went to the mayor and said, I've got a dragon and I've saved the town. Noble persevere, cried the mayor. We will get up a subscription for you, and the crown to you in public with a laurel wreath. So the mayor put his name down for £5, and the corporation each gave 3, and other people gave their guineas and half crowns and crowns. And while the subscription was being made, the mayor ordered 3 poems at his own expense from the town poet to celebrate the occasion. The poems were very much more admired, especially by the mayor and corporation. The first poem dealt with the noble conduct of the mayor in arranging to have the dragon tied up. The second described the splendid assistance rendered by the corporation, and the third expressed the pride and joy of the poet in being permitted to sing such deeds, besides which were the actions of St. George must appear quite commonplace to all with a feeling heart and a well-balanced brain. When the subscription was finished, there was £1,000, and a committee was formed to settle what should be done with it. A third of it went to pay for the banquet to the mayor and the corporation. Another third was spent in buying a gold collar with a dragon on it for the mayor, and the gold medals with the dragons on them for the corporation. And what was left in the committee's expenses? So there was nothing for the blacksmith except the laurel wreath, and the knowledge that it really was he who saved the town. But after the things went on a little better with the blacksmith, to begin with, the baby did not cry so much as it had before. Then the rich lady who owned the goat was so touched by John's noble action that she ordered a complete set of shoes at 2 shillings 4 pence, and even made it up to 2 shillings 6 pence, in grateful recognition of his public-spirited conduct. Then tourists used to come in breaks from quite a long way off and pay 2 pence each to go down the steps and peep through the iron grating at the rusty dragon in the dungeon. And it was 3 pence extra for each party if the blacksmith let off a colored fire to see it by, which, as the fire was extremely short, was 2 pence halfpenny, clear profit every time. And the blacksmith wife used to provide teas and 9 pence a head, and altogether things grew brighter week by week. The baby, named John after his father, and called Johnny for short, began presently to grow up. He was great friends with Tina, the daughter of the whitesmith, who lived nearly opposite. She was a dear little girl with yellow pigtails and blue eyes, and she was tired of hearing the story of how Johnny, when he was a baby, had been minded by a real dragon. The two children used to go together to peep through the iron grating at the dragon, and sometimes they would hear him mew pitilessly, and they would light a halfpenny's worth of colored fire to look at him by, and they grew older and wiser. At last one day the mayor and corporation, hunting the hare in their golden crowns, came screaming back to the town gates with the news that a lame, humpy giant as big as a tin church was coming over the marshes towards the town. "We're lost," said the mayor. "I'd give £1,000 to anyone who could keep that giant out of town. I know he eats by his teeth." No one seemed to know what to do, but Johnny and Tina were listening, and they each looked at each other and ran off as fast as their boots could carry them. They ran through the forge and down the dungeon steps and knocked at the iron door. "Who's there?" said the dragon. "It's only us," said the children. And the dragon was so dull from having been alone for 10 years that he said, "Come in, dears." "You won't hurt us or breathe fire at us or anything?" said Tina. And the dragon said, "Not for worlds." So they went in and talked to him and told him what the weather was like outside and what there was in the papers. And at last Johnny said, "And there's a lame giant in town. He wants you." "Does he?" said the dragon, showing his teeth. "If only I were out of this." "If we let you loose, you might manage to run away before he could catch you." "Yes, I might," answered the dragon. "But then again, I mightn't." "Why, you'd never fight him?" said Tina. "No," said the dragon. "I'm all for peace, I am. You let me out, and you'll see." So the children loosed the dragon from the chain and the collar, and he broke down one end of the dungeon and went out, only pausing at the forge door to get the blacksmith to riveting his wing. He met the lame giant at the gate of the town, and the giant banged on the dragon with his club as if he were banging on an iron foundry, and the dragon behaved like a smelting works, all fire and smoke. It was a fearful sight, and people watched it from a distance, falling off their legs with the shock of every bang, and always getting up to look again. At last the dragon won, and the giant sneaked away across the marshes, and the dragon, who was very tired, went home to sleep, announcing his intention of eating the town in the morning. He went back to his old dungeon because he was a stranger in the town, and he did not know of any other respectable lodging. Then Tina and Johnny went to the mayor and corporation and said, "The giant is settled. Please give us £1,000 reward." But the mayor said, "No, no, my boy. It is not you who have settled the giant. It is the dragon. I suppose you have chained him up again? When he comes to claim the reward, he shall have it." "He isn't chained up yet," said Johnny. "Shall I send him to claim the reward?" But the mayor said he need not trouble, and now he offered £1,000 to anyone who could get the dragon chained up again. "I don't trust you," said Johnny. "Look how you treated my father when he chained up the dragon." But the people who were listening at the door interrupted and said that if Johnny could fasten up the dragon again, they would turn out the mayor and let Johnny be mayor of this place. For they had been dissatisfied with the mayor for some time and thought they would like a change. So Johnny said, "Done." And off he went, hand in hand with Tina. And they called on all their little friends and said, "Will you help us save the town?" And all the children said, "Yes, of course we will. What fun." "Well then," said Tina, "you must all bring your basins of bread and milk to the forge tomorrow at breakfast time." "And if I'm ever mayor," said Johnny, "I will give a banquet, and you shall be invited, and we'll have nothing but sweet things from beginning to end." All the children promised, and next morning Tina and Johnny rolled their big washing tub down the winding stair. "What's that noise?" asked the dragon. "It's only a big giant breathing," said Tina. "He's gone by now." Then, when all the town children brought their bread and milk, Tina emptied it into the washbin. And when the tub was full, Tina knocked at the iron door with the grating in it and said, "May we come in?" "Oh, yes," said the dragon. "It's very dull here." So they went in, and with the help of the 9 other children, they lifted the washing tub and set it down by the dragon. Then all the other children went away. And Tina and Johnny sat down and cried. "What's this?" asked the dragon. "And what's the matter?" "This is bread and milk," said Johnny. "It's our breakfast, all of it." "Well," said the dragon, "I don't see what you want with breakfast. I'm going to eat everyone in town as soon as I've rested a little."
"Dear Mr. Dragon," said Tina, "I wish you wouldn't eat us. How would you like to be eaten yourself?"
"Not at all," the dragon confessed, "but nobody will eat me." "I don't know," said Johnny. "There's a giant." "I know, I fought with him and licked him." "Yes, but there's another come now. The one you fought was only the one's little brother. This one is half as big again." "He's 7 times as big," said Tina. "No, 9 times," said Johnny. "He's bigger than the steeple." "Oh dear," said the dragon. "I never expected this." "And the mayor has told him where you are," Tina went on, "and he's coming to eat you as soon as he has sharpened his big knife. The mayor told him you were a wild dragon, but he didn't mind. He said he only ate wild dragons with bread and sauce." "That's tiresome," said the dragon. "And I suppose this sloppy stuff in the tub is the bread sauce?" Children said it was. "Of course," they added. "Bread sauce is only served with wild dragons. Tamed ones are served with applesauce and onion stuffing. What a pity you are not a tame one. He'd never look at you again." They said, "Goodbye, poor dragon. We shall never see you again, and now you'll know what it's like to be eaten." And they began to cry again. "Well, but look here," said the dragon. "Couldn't you pretend I was a tame dragon? Tell the dragon that or tell the giant that I'm a little timid tame dragon that you kept for a pet?" "He'd never believe it," said Johnny. "If you were our tame dragon, we would have kept you tied up, you know. We shouldn't like to risk losing such a dear, pretty pet." Then the dragon begged them to fasten him up at once, and they did so, with the collar and chains that were made years ago in the days when men sang over their work and made it strong enough to bear any strain. And then they went away and told the people what they had done, and Johnny was made mayor and had a glorious feast exactly as he said he would, with nothing in it but sweet things. And began the Turkish delight and halfpenny buns, and went on with oranges, toffee, coconut ice, peppermints, jam puffs, raspberry noyau, ice creams and meringues, and ended with bull's eye and gingerbread and acid drops. This was all very well for Johnny and Tina, but if you were kind to children with feeling hearts, you will perhaps feel sorry for the poor, deceived, deluded dragon, chained up in the dull dungeon with nothing to do but think over the shocking untruths that Johnny had told him. When he thought how he had been tricked, the poor captive dragon began to weep, and large tears fell down over his rusty plates, and presently he began to feel faint, as people sometimes do when they've been crying, especially if they have not had anything to eat for 10 years or so. And then the poor creature dried his eyes and looked about him, and there he saw the tub of bread and milk. So he thought, if giants like this damp white stuff, perhaps I should like it too. And he tasted a little, and liked it so much that he ate it all up. The next time the tourists came and Johnny let off the colored fire, the dragon said shyly, "Excuse my troubling you, but could you bring me a little more bread and milk?" So Johnny arranged that people should go around with carts every day to collect the children's bread and milk for the dragon. The children were fed at the town's expense on whatever they liked, and they ate nothing but cakes and buns and sweet things, and they said the poor dragon was very welcome to their bread and milk. Now, when Johnny had been mayor 10 years or so, he married Tina, and on their wedding morning, they went to see the dragon. He had grown quite tame, and his rusty plates had fallen off in places, and underneath he was soft and furry to stroke. So now they stroked him. And he said, "I don't know how I could have ever liked eating anything but bread and milk. I am a tame dragon now, aren't I?" And when they said that, yes, he was, the dragon said, "I am so tame. Won't you undo me?" And some people would have been afraid to trust him, but Johnny and Tina were so happy on their wedding day that they could not believe any harm of anyone in the world. So they loosened the chains, and the dragon said, "Excuse me a moment. There are 1 or 2 little things I should like to fetch." And he moved off to those mysterious steps and went down, out of sight into the darkness. And as he moved, more and more of his rusty plates fell off. In a few minutes, they heard him clanking back up the stairs. He brought something in his mouth. It was a bag of gold. "It's no good to me," he said. "Perhaps you might find it useful." So they thanked him very kindly. "More where that came from," he said, and fetched more and more and more, till they told him to stop. So now they were rich, and so were their fathers and mothers indeed. Everyone was rich, and there was no more poor people in the town. And they all got rich without working, which is very wrong, but the dragon had never been to school, as you have, so he knew no better. And as the dragon came out of the dungeon, following Johnny and Tina into the bright gold blue of their wedding day, he blinked his eyes as a cat does in the sunshine and shook himself. The last of his plates dropped off, and his wings with them. And he was just like a very, very extra-sized cat. And from that day he grew furrier and furrier, and he was the beginning of all cats. Nothing of the dragon remained except the claws, which all cats have, as you can easily ascertain. And I hope you've seen how important it is to feed your cats with bread and milk. If you were to let it have nothing to eat but mice and birds, it might grow larger and fiercer and scalier and tailier, and get wings and turn into the beginning of dragons. And then there would be all the bother over again. Okay, I like that story. That one was funny. That one was really funny. So it was called Dragon Tamer, but it turned out to be the origin of cats. And now that bit about cats in the beginning makes a little bit more sense. Appreciate everybody being here. Still got 10 of my ghosty readers, 31 likes. I know that it's later than, there than it is here. So if anybody does have to go to bed, absolutely understand. What I'm going to do is just start this little poll. There we go. Because I am down for whatever. Still got one more in. One more in me. The only thing is, I think there's 8 stories in this book, and this is chapter 7. Maybe there's only 7. This might be the last one in the book. Let's see. Oh, yes, there looks like a lot of dialogue. Yep, there is 8 books. So we'll finish it up next time, too. But I think we can read one more. I'm having a good time. Plus, I feel like I hit that nice little stride. But totally up to you guys. Love you. If that was to me, it could have been to JB for saying hey. Aw, appreciate you, Rafa. Yeah, I love you, JB. Keep you on, but I gotta wake up yeah, absolutely, Boo. If you gotta go to bed, go to bed. And I hope you sleep well and have a beautiful day tomorrow. Really appreciate that. That reminded me. I like to do 5 on the table and 5 on the book. So there's my second 5 for the night, or for the month. Jeez, look at that spelling. Look at that spelling. Misfits. Sniping a membership. Good Vibes, Vivo, DCG, The Rock, and Aaron Munn all getting memberships. Appreciate everybody. Appreciate everybody. All of your support means the world. Believing in ghosts simply just means the world to me. Especially on nights like tonight when all we do is sit and read. Really means the world that you guys enjoy this. And it's also not something I've seen too much of, other people just reading. So I encourage you, if you want to give it a try, I encourage you to do so. Believe in ghosts and the chaos. All right. Let's see. Got 4 votes. Now one more vote could tie it up. Got 11 viewers in here. I think I got a lot of sleepers in here. All right. We'll do one more and then we'll wrap it up because it looks like all of you are starting to fall asleep a little bit. All right, chapter 7, The Fiery Dragon, or The Heart of the Stone and the Heart of Gold. The little white princess always woke in her little white bed when the starlings began to chatter in their pearl gray morning. As soon as the woods were awake, she used to run up the twisting turret stars with her little bare feet, and stand on the top of the tower in her white bedgown, and kiss her hands to the sun, and to the woods, and to the sleeping town, and say, "Good morning, pretty world." Then she would run down the cold steps and dress herself in her short skirt and her cap and apron, and begin the day's work. She swept the rooms and made the breakfast. She washed the dishes and she scoured the pans. And all this she did because she was a real princess. For of all who should have served her, only one remained faithful, her old nurse, who had lived with her in the tower all the princess's life. And now the nurse was old and feeble. The princess would not let her work any more, but did all the housework herself, while nurse sat still and did the sewing. Because this was a real princess with silk like milk and hair, skin like milk, and hair like flax, and a heart like gold. Her name was Cybernetta, and her grandmother was Sabra, who married St. George after he killed the dragon. And by real rights, all the country belonged to her. The woods that stretched away to the mountains, the downs that sloped down to the sea, the pretty fields of corn and maize and rye, and olive orchards and vineyards, and the little town itself, with its towers and its turrets, its steep roofs and strange windows, that nestled in the hollow between the sea, where the whirlpool was, and the mountains, white with snow, and rosy with sunrise. But when her father and mother had died, leaving her cousin to take care of the kingdom till she grew up, he, being a very evil prince, took everything away from her, and all the people followed him. And now nothing was left of all her possessions, except the great dragon-proof tower that her grandfather St. George had built, and of all who should have been her servants only the good nurse. This was why Cybernetta was the first person in all the land to get a glimpse of the wonder. Early, 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 while all the townspeople were fast asleep, she ran up the turret steps and looked out over the field. And at the other side of the field there was a green, ferny ditch and a rose-thorny hedge, and then came the wood. And as Cybernetta stood on her tower, she saw a shaking and a twisting of a rose-thorny hedge, and then something very bright and shining wiggled out threw it onto the ferny ditch and back again. It only came out for a minute, but she saw it quite plainly, and she said to herself, "Dear me, what a curious, shiny, bright-looking creature! If it were bigger, and if I didn't know that there have been no fabulous monsters for quite a long time now, I should almost think it was a dragon." The thing, whatever it was, did look rather like a dragon, but then it was too small, and it looked rather like a lizard. Only then it was too big. It was about as long as a hearthrug. I wish I had not been in such a hurry to get back into the wood, said Severnetta. Of course, it's quite safe for me in my dragon-proof tower, but if it is a dragon, it's quite big enough to eat people, and today's the 1st of May, and the children go out to get flowers in the wood. When Severnetta had done the housework, she did not leave so much as a speck of dust anywhere, even in the corniest corner of the winding stair. She put out her milk white silky gown with a moon daisies worked on it, and went up to the top of her tower again. Across the fields, troops of children were going out to gather the May, and the sound of their laughter and singing came from the top of the tower. I do hope it wasn't a dragon, said Severnetta. The children went by twos and by threes and by tens and by 20s, and the reds and blues and yellows and whites of their frock all scattered on the green of the field. It's like a green silk mantle worked with flowers, said the princess, smiling. Then, by twos and by threes, by tens, by 20s, the children vanished into the wood till the mantle of the forest was left plain green once more. All the embroidery is unpicked, said the princess, sighing. The sun shone, and the sky was blue, and the fields were quite green, and all the flowers were very bright indeed, because it was May Day. Then, quite suddenly, a cloud passed over the sun, and the silence was broken by shrieks from far off, and, like a many-colored torrent, all the children burst from the woods and rushed, a red, blue, and yellow and white wave, across the field, screaming as they ran. Their voices came up to the princess in the tower, and she heard the words threaded on their screams like beads on sharp needles. The dragon! The dragon! The dragon! Open the gates! The dragon is coming! The fiery dragon! And they swept across the field and into the gates of the town, and the princess heard the gate bang, and the children were out of sight. But on the other side of the field, the rose thorns crackled and smashed at the hedge, and something very large and glaring with horrible trampled the ferns in the ditch for one moment before it hid itself again in the covert of the wood. The princess went down and told her nurse, and the nurse at once locked the great door of the tower and put the key in her pocket. Let them take care of themselves, said she, when the princess begged to be allowed to go out and get help to take care of the children. My business is to take care of you, my precious, and I'm going to do it, as old as I am. I can turn a small key still. So Severnetta went up again to the top of the tower and cried whenever she thought of the children and the fiery dragon, for she knew, of course, that the gates of the town were not dragon-proof, and that the dragon could just walk in whenever it liked. The children ran straight to the palace where the prince was cracking his hunting whip down at the kennels and told them what happened. Good sport, said the prince, and he ordered out a pack of hippopotamuses at once. It was his custom to hunt big game with hippopotamuses, and people would not have minded that so much, but he would swagger about in the streets of the town with his pack yelping and gambolling at his heels, and when he did that, the green grocer, who had his stall in the marketplace, always regretted it, and the cockery merchant, who spread his wares on the pavement, was ruined for life every time the prince chose to show off his pack. The prince rode out of the town with his hippopotamuses trotting and frisking behind him, and people got inside their houses as quickly as they could when they heard the voices of his pack and the blowing of his horn. The pack squeezed through the town gates and off across the country to hunt the dragon. A few of you who have not seen a pack of hippopotamuses in full cry will be able to imagine at all what the hunt was like. To begin with, hippopotamuses do not bay like hounds, they grunt like pigs, and their grunt is a very big and fierce. Then, of course, no one expects hippopotamuses to jump. They just crash through the hedges and lumber through the standing corn, doing serious injury to the crops and annoying the farmers very much. All the hippopotamuses had collars with their names and addresses on it, but when the farmers called at the palace to complain of the injury to the standing crops, the prince always said it served them right for leaving their crops standing about in people's way, and he never paid anything at all. So now, when he and his pack went out, several people in the town whispered, I wish the dragon would eat him, which was very wrong of them, no doubt, but he was such a very nasty prince. They hunted by field, and they hunted by wold. They drew the woods blank, and the ascent didn't lie in the downs at all. The dragon was shy and would not show itself. But just as the prince was beginning to think, there was no dragon at all, but only a cock or a bull. His favorite old hippopotamus gave tongue. The prince blew his horn and shouted, "Tally-ho, hark forward, tentative!" And the whole pack charged downhill towards the hollow by the wood. For there, plain to be seen, was the dragon, as large as a barge, glowing like a furnace and spitting fire and showing his shining teeth. "The hunt is up!" cried the prince, and indeed it was, for the dragon, instead of behaving as a quarry should and running away, ran straight at the pack, and the prince on his elephant, and the mortification of seeing his prize pack swallowed up one by one in the twinkling of an eye by the dragon they had come out to hunt. The dragon swallowed all the hippopotamuses, just as a dog swallows bits of meat. It was a shocking sight. Of the whole of the pack that had come out sporting so merrily to the music of the horn, now not even a puppy hippopotamus was left, and the dragon was looking anxiously around to see if he had forgotten anything. The prince slipped off his elephant on the other side and ran into the thickest part of the wood. He hoped the dragon could not break through the brushes there, since they were very strong and close. He went crawling on his hands and knees in an unprince-like way, and at last, finding a hollow tree, he crept into it. The wood was very still. No crashing of branches, no smell of burning came to alarm the prince. He drained the silver hunting bottle slung from his shoulder and stretched his legs in the hollow tree. He never shed a single tear for his poor tame hippopotamuses who had been eaten from his hand and followed him faithfully, in all the pleasures of the chase for so many years. For he was a false prince, with the skin like leather and hair like hearth brushes and his heart like a stone, and he never shed a tear, but he just went to sleep. When he awoke, it was dark. He crept out of the wood and rubbed his eyes. The wood was black around him, but there was a red glow in the dell close by. It was a fire of sticks, and beside it sat a ragged youth with long yellow hair. All around lay sleeping forms which breathed heavily. "Who are you?" said the prince. "I am Elfin, the pig keeper," said the ragged youth. "And who are you?" "I'm Tiresome, the prince," said the other. "And what are you doing out of your palace at this time of night?" asked the pig keeper severely. "I've been hunting," said the prince. The pig keeper laughed. "Oh, it was you I saw then. A good hunt, wasn't it? My pigs and I looked on." All the sleeping forms grunted and snored, and the prince saw that they were pigs. He knew by their manners. "If you had known as much as I do," Elvin went on, "you might have saved your pack." "What do you mean?" said Tiresome. "Why, the dragon," said Elfin. "You went out at the wrong time of day. The dragon should be hunted at night." "No, thank you," said the prince, with a shudder. "A daylight hunt is good enough for me, you silly pig keeper." "Oh, well," said Elfin. "Do as you like about it. The dragon will come and hunt you tomorrow, as likely as not. I don't care if he does, you silly prince." "You're very rude," said Tiresome. "Oh, no, only truthful," said Elfin. "Well, tell me the truth, then. What is it that, if I had known as much as you do about, I shouldn't have lost my hippopotamuses?" "You don't speak very good English," said Elfin. "But come, what will you give me if I tell you?" "If you tell me what?" said Tiresome. "What you want to know." "I don't want to know anything," said Prince Tiresome. "Then you're more silly even than I thought," said Elfin. "Don't you want to know how to settle the dragon before he settles you?" "I might as well," the prince admitted. "Well, I haven't much patience at any time," said Elfin, "and now I can assure you that there is very little left. What will you give me if I tell you?" "Half my kingdom," said the prince, "and my cousin's hand in marriage." "Done," said the pig keeper. "Here goes. The dragon grows small at night. He sleeps under the roof of this tree. I use him to light my fire with." And sure enough, there under the tree was the dragon on a nest of scorched moss, and he was about as long as your finger. "How can I kill him?" said the prince. "I don't know if you can kill him," said Elfie, "but you can take him away if you brought anything to put him in. That bottle of yours would do." So between them they managed, with bits of stick and by singeing their fingers a little, to poke and shove the dragon till they made it creep into the silver hunting bottle. And then the prince screwed on the top tight. "Now we've got him," said Elfin. "Let's take him home and put Solomon's seal on the mouth of the bottle. Then he'll be safe enough. Come along, we'll divide up the kingdom tomorrow, and then I shall have some money to buy some fine clothes to go courting in." But then the wicked prince made promises he did not make them to keep. "Go on with you, what do you mean?" he said. "I found the dragon, and I've imprisoned him. I never said a word about courtings or kingdoms. If you say I did, I shall cut your head off at once." And he drew his sword. "All right," said Elfie, shrugging his shoulders. "I'm better off than you are, anyhow." "What do you mean?" sputtered the prince. "Why, you've only got a kingdom and a dragon, but I've got clean hands and 75 fine black pigs." So Elfin sat down again by his fire, and the prince went home and told his parliament how clever and brave he had been. And though he woke them up on purpose to tell them, they were not angry, but said, "You are indeed a brave and clever," for they knew what happened to people with whom the prince was not pleased. Then the prime minister solemnly put Solomon's seal on the mouth of the bottle, and the bottle was put in the treasury, which was the strongest building in the town, and was made of solid copper, with walls as thick as Waterloo Bridge. The bottle was set down among the sacks of gold, and the junior secretary of the junior clerk of the last lord of the treasury was appointed to sit up all night with it to see if anything happened. The junior secretary had never seen a dragon, and what was more, he did not believe the prince had ever seen the dragon either. The prince had never been a really truthful boy, and it would have been just like him to bring home a bottle with nothing in it, and then to pretend that there was a dragon inside. So the junior, in secrecy, did not at all mind being left. He gave him the key, and when everyone in town had gone back to bed, and let in some of the junior secretaries from the governor's departments, and they had a jolly game of hide and seek among the sacks of gold, and played marbles with the diamonds and rubies and pearls in the big ivory chests. They enjoyed themselves very much, but by and by the copper treasury began to get warmer and warmer, and suddenly the junior secretary cried out, "Look at the bottle!" The bottle, sealed with Solomon's seal, had swallowed into 3 times its proper size, swollen into 3 times its proper size, and seemed to be nearly red hot. And the air got warmer and warmer, and the bottle bigger and bigger, till all the junior secretaries agreed that the place was too hot to hold them. And out they went, tumbling over each other in their haste, and just as the last got out and locked the door, the bottle burst, and out came the dragon, very fiery and swelling more and more every minute, and he began to eat the sacks of gold and crunch up the pearls and diamonds and rubies as if they were sugar. By breakfast time he had devoured the whole of the prince's treasures, and when the prince came along the street, and about 11, he met the dragon coming out of the broken door of the treasury, with molten gold still dripping from his jaws. Then the prince turned and ran for his life, and as he ran towards the dragon-proof tower, the little white princess saw him coming, and she ran down and unlocked the door to let him in, and slammed the dragon-proof door in the fiery face of the dragon, who sat down and whined outside because he wanted the prince very much indeed. The princess took the Prince Tiresome into the best room and laid the cloth, and gave him cream and eggs and white grapes and honey and bread, with many other things, yellow and white and good to eat. And she served him just as kindly as she would have done if he had been anyone else instead of the bad prince who had taken away her kingdom and kept it for himself, because she was a true princess and had a heart of gold. When he had eaten and drunk, he begged the princess to show him how to lock and unlock the door. The nurse was still asleep, so there was no one to tell the princess not to do it, and she did. "You turn the key like this," she said, "and the door keeps shut. But turn it 9 times round the wrong way, and the door flies open." And so it did, and the moment it opened, the prince pushed the white princess out of her tower, just as he had pushed her out of her kingdom, and shut the door, for he wanted to have the tower all for himself. And there she was in the street, and on the other side of the way the dragon was sitting, whining. But he did not try to eat her, because, though the old nurse did not know it, dragons cannot eat white princesses with hearts of gold. The princess could not walk through the streets of the town in her milky silky gown with the daisies on it, and with no hat and no gloves, so she turned the other way and ran out across the meadows toward the wood. She had never been out of her town before, and the soft grass under her feet felt like grass of paradise. She ran right into the thickest part of the wood because she did not know what her heart was made of, and she was afraid of the dragon. And there was a dell she came on, Elfin and his 75 fine pigs. He was playing his flute, and around him the pigs were dancing cheerfully on their hind legs. "Oh dear," said the princess, "do take care of me, I am so frightened." "I will," said Elfin, putting his arms around her. "Now you're quite safe. What are you frightened of?" "The dragon," she said. "So it's gotten out of the silver bottle," said Elfin. "I hope it's eaten the prince." "No," said Cybernetta. "But why?" He told her of the mean trick that the prince had played on him. "And he promised me half his kingdom in the hand of his cousin, the princess," said Elfin. "Oh dear, what a shame!" said Cybernetta, trying to get out of his arms. "How dare he?" "What's the matter?" he said, holding her tighter. "It was a sham, or at least I thought so. But now he may keep his kingdom half and whole, if I may keep what I have." "What's that?" said the princess. "Why, you, my pretty, my dear," said Elfin. "As for the princess, his cousin, forgive me, dearest heart, but when I asked for her, I hadn't seen a real princess, the only princess, my princess." "Do you mean me?" said Cybernetta. "Who else?" he asked. "Yes, but 5 minutes ago you hadn't seen me." "5 minutes ago I was a pig keeper, and now I've held you in my arms. I am a prince, though I should have to keep my pigs to the end of my days." "But you haven't asked me," said the princess. "You asked me to take care of you," said Elfin, "and I will all my long life." So that was settled, and they began to talk of really important things, such as the dragon and the prince. And all the time Elfin did not know that this was the princess, but he knew that she had a heart of gold, and he told her so many times. "The mistake," said Elfin, "was not having the dragon-proof bottle. I see that now." "Oh, is that all?" said the princess. "I can easily get you one of those, because everything in my tower is dragon-proof." We ought to do something to settle the dragon and save the little children." So she started off to get the bottle, but she would not let Elfin come with her. "If what you say is true," she said, "if you are sure that I have a heart of gold, the dragon won't hurt me, and somebody must stay with the pigs." Elfin was quite sure, so he let her go. She found the door of her tower open. The dragon had waited patiently for the prince, and the moment he opened the door and came out, though he was only out for an instant to post a letter to his prime minister saying where he was and asking them to send a fire brigade to deal with the fiery dragon, the dragon ate him. Then the dragon went back to the wood, because it was getting near his time to grow small for the night. So Cybernetta went in and kissed her nurse and made her a cup of tea and explained what was going to happen, and that she had a heart of gold, so the dragon couldn't eat her. And the nurse saw that of course the princess was quite safe, and kissed her and let her go. She took the dragon-proof bottle made of burnished brass and ran back to the wood and to the dell where Elfin was sitting among the sleek black pigs waiting for her. "I thought you were never coming back," he said. "You have been away a year at least." The princess sat down beside him among the pigs, and they held each other's hands till it was dark. Then the dragon came crawling over the moss, scorching it as he came, and getting smaller as he crawled, and curled up under the root of the tree. "Now then," said Elfin, "you hold the bottle." Then he poked and prodded the dragon with bits of stick till it curled into the dragon-proof bottle. But there was no stopper. "Never mind," said Elfie. "I'll put my finger in it for a stopper." "No, let me," said the princess, but of course Elfin would not let her. He stuffed his finger into the top of the bottle, and the princess cried out, the sea, run for the cliffs!" And they went, with the 75 pigs trotting steadily after them in a long black procession. The bottle got hotter and hotter in Elfin's hands, because the dragon inside was puffing fire and smoke with all its might, hotter and hotter and hotter. But Elfin held on till they came to the cliff in the edge, where was the dark blue sea. and the whirlpool going round and round and round. Elfin lifted the bottle high above his head and hurled it out between the stars and the sea, and it fell in the middle of the whirlpool. "We've saved the country," said the princess. "You've saved the little children. Give me your hands." "I can't," said Elfin. "I shall never be able to take your dear hands again. My hands are burned off." And so they were. There were only black cinders where his hands ought to have been. The princess kissed them and cried over them and tore pieces of her silky, milky gown to tie them up with, and the two went back to the tower and told the nurse all about everything, and the pigs sat outside and waited. "He is the bravest man in the world," said Cybernetta. "He has saved the country and the little children, but oh, his hands, his poor dear darling hands." Here the door of the room opened, and the oldest of the 75 pigs came in. It went up to Elfin and rubbed itself against him with little loving grunts. "See the dear creature," said the nurse, wiping away the tears. "It knows. It knows." Cybernetta stroked the pig because Elfin had no hands for stroking for anything else. "The only cure for dragon burn," said the old nurse, "is pig's fat, and well, that faithful creature knows it." "I wouldn't for a kingdom," cried Elfin, stroking the pig as best he could with his elbow. "Is there no other cure?" asked the princess. Here another pig put his black nose in at the door, and then another and another, till the room was full of pigs, a surging mass of rounded blackedness, pushing and struggling to get at Elfin, and grunting softly in the language of true affection. "There is one other," said the nurse. "The dear, affectionate beasts, they all want to die for you." "What is the other cure?" asked Cybernetta anxiously. "If a man is burnt by a dragon," said the nurse, "and a certain number of people are willing to die for him, it is enough if each should kiss the burn and wish it well in the depths of his loving heart." "The number! The number!" cried Cybernetta. 77, said the nurse. "We have only 75 pigs," said the princess, "and with me that's 76. "It must be 77, and I really can't die for him, so nothing can be done," said the nurse sadly. "He must have cork hands." "I knew about 77 loving people," said Elfin, "but I never thought my dear pigs loved me so much as all this. And my dear, too, and of course that only makes it more impossible. There is one other charm that cures dragon burns, though I'd rather be burnt black all over than marry anyone but you, my dear, my pretty." "Why, who must you marry to cure your dragon burns?" asked Cybernetta. "A princess. That's how St. George cured his burns." "There now, think of that," said the nurse, "and I never heard tell of a cure. I never heard tell of that cure, old as I am." But Cybernetta threw her arms around Elfin's neck and held him as though she would never let him go. "Then it's all right, my dear, brave, precious Elfin," she cried, "for I am a princess, and you shall be my prince. Come along, nurse. Don't wait to put on your bonnet. We'll go to be married this very moment." So they went, and the pigs came after, moving in stately blackness 2 by 2, and the minute he was married to the princess, Elfin's hands got quite well. And the people who were wary of Prince Tiresome and his hippopotamuses hailed Cybernetta and her husband as rightful sovereigns of the land. The next morning, the prince and princess went out to see if the dragon had been washed ashore. They could see nothing of him. But when they looked out toward the whirlpool, they saw a cloud of steam, and a fisherman reported that the water for miles around was hot enough to shave with. And as the water is hot there to this day, we may feel pretty sure that the fierceness of that dragon was such all the waters of all the sea were not enough to cool him. The whirlpool is too strong for him to be able to get out of. So there he spins round and around forever and ever, doing some useful work at last, and warming the water for poor fisher folk to shave with. The prince and princess rule the land well and wisely. The nurse lives with them and does nothing but fine sewing, and only that when she wants to very much. The prince keeps no hippopotamuses, and is consequently very popular. The 75 devoted pigs live in white marble sites with brass knockers and pigs on the doorplate. and are washed twice a day with Turkish sponges and soap scented with violets, and no one objects to their following the prince when he walks around, for they behave beautifully and always kept to the footpath, and obey the notices about walking on the grass. The princess fed them every day with her own hands, and her first edict in coming to the throne was that the word pork should never be uttered on pain of death, and should, beside, be scratched out of all dictionaries. I like it. Off to bed. Sorry I missed the stream. No, no worries at all, Matt. Much love, fam. Hippopotamuses is fun to say. Hippopotami would be interesting. Greek in origin, I believe. I believe you are right. And I wanted to say hippopotami so bad, but hippopotamuses is just fun to say. And using your phone for other things, we're happy with whatever you want to do. I appreciate you, Leighton, Layla. You guys are absolutely incredible. I think that's where we're going to wrap it up for the night, and we'll finish the 8th chapter, which is Kind Little Edmund, or The Caves and the Cockatrice. And I thoroughly hope that you enjoyed these stories. I know that these were written at the late 1800s, so a lot of words that are utilized for a lot of different things can be utilized. And so I just wanted to say that out loud. But these are incredible little stories, and my only wish is that I had these when I was growing up. These would have been so fun to read. But I really, really appreciate everybody hanging in with me. 35 likes on the stream. That's incredible. Getting through 3 stories once more, and of course, any night I get to hang out with the Ghost fam is a good night for me. So with that, let me go ahead and see if there just happens to be anybody on at the moment. And that way we can just end with a nice little redirect, and we can all go to bed. Oh, Jay's Corner is live? Is Jay's Corner still live? Let's find out before I do that. Yes, he is. 266 watching. He must have got the DPM raid. Good for him. All right. Well, it's definitely pretty busy over there. So it's a little bit of the polar opposite, but he is definitely a chill guy. I will say that he is friendly towards families, just maybe not so family friendly. There will be some language, so just wanted to throw that out there. But with that, everybody always remember to go out and get everything that you set out to get. Don't let anything stop you. Don't be afraid to read a book. And thank you for believing in ghosts. We can do chaos. That's fine with me. Typically, I just go wherever you're going next, Rafa. But I didn't see you. All right, let's go raid. Pokey Ghost raid. I'm not sure if my redirects are working again. But I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your night. I think it's time for me to get on some munch and get some rest. Uncle Kev, that was an awesome story. I loved it. Excellent. I love that you loved it. I loved them too, and I can't wait to finish this. And I'm also going to try and find some other fantasy books. We will eventually get back to the Wizard of Oz and finish that series, but I think I'm liking the fantasy turn. So we're gonna look for some more fun fantasy stories of days of old. All right, let's go see chaos. I love you all. Thank you all so much, and I will see you on Thursday. Drop in, and we'll do some art. Bye, y'all.